All right, Chris Ryan is here. Sean Fennessey is here. This is the first Rewatchables we've done in person, at least for 14 months. I think it was Outbreak was the last one we did together, which is or Contagion. Yeah. I can't even get that right. Look, I'm so rusty already. But yeah, Contagion, 14 plus months ago.
Yeah.
And we were kind of like, man, I hope. And now we're back.
Prophetic. That was prophetic.
Somehow the studio feels the same. Craig, the producer, is right over there staring at us again. All the equipment worked. It's pretty exciting. Goodfellas, the ultimate director's film, a pop culture classic, an inspired idea that paved the way for The Sopranos. Is this the best movie of Martin Scorsese's career, Sean Fennessey?
Damn, I probably should have anticipated you were going to start there.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it is. I think it's the culmination of everything that he had been leading up to, and everything since feels like almost a response to the heights that he reached in this movie. So yes, I'd be curious what Chris thinks.
CR?
Yeah, perfect Martin Scorsese movie. Perfect synthesis of his 70s stuff and the early 80s, and then also like some of the Hollywood sensibility that he had going forward. So like this is the exact center point, the median. And it's the perfect movie. I mean, it's the first movie I was ever obsessed with. Which I think makes it probably the most rewarding rewatchable we've ever done. Like, obviously, he is like the sort of totem of this pod, but for me, it's like this was the first movie that it's the things that I'm obsessed with are the things that happen just off camera, or the things that happen in a facial expression or a gesture that a character makes. Like, I've gotten to that point with this movie where the major plot points are hardly even the point anymore. It's more about the way Bat says, "You fucking feel strong." Like I used to say that to guys on my JV basketball team when they would swat my shots out of the solar system. So like this is a very big deal for me.
I also think it's the best movie of his career. It was upsetting in the moment when it didn't win the Oscar, and then then when he didn't win it, and it slowly got worse. And then right around the early 2000s when it had become so rewatchable. Yeah. And you're picking up stuff. The big thing leaving the theater was the last 20 minutes was so off-putting the first time you saw it, which was intentional and designed and brilliant. But, you you just wanted to hang with all these people, and then it goes wrong. And you kind of left the theater like, whoa, you're a little frazzled. And I think it worked against the movie in some weird way. And I remember Dances Wolves comes out this year too. And that same kind of big sprawling movie done totally different. It's like 3 hours plus, but you left that movie and you felt good, and it was like this success story for Costner, and then it just kind of flipped. But it's kind of hard for me to believe everybody didn't see this right away. That like, wow, not only is this one of the best directors we have, but this is probably the best he's going to do with IP.
Well, I think it's one of those things where at the time most critics knew. There are some reviews that you read Roger Ebert or Richard Schickel or a handful of kind of big-time critics at the time, and they're like, this is it. Like, he did it. He probably made the best movie of the 70s with Taxi Driver. He probably made the best movie of the 80s with Raging Bull. But this is him returning to the milieu where he feels most comfortable. It's been almost 20 years since he made Mean Streets. He knows this world better than anybody. He knows how to make this world seem intoxicating, scary, and ultimately full of punishment, really. I mean, everybody in this movie gets punished. And so you could sense that, like, in the critical community and especially among fans, it's one of the first genuine hit movies that Martin Scorsese makes. We think of him now and he's kind of a box office titan. I mean, he's made a bunch of movies in the last 15 years that have grossed $100 million, but that was not his reputation. In the 70s and 80s, he was a person who made provocative, exciting cinema, but not necessarily a person who was a guarantee to get people to come out to the movie theater. And this movie doubled its budget at the box office, and it kind of also paves the way for him as a really commercial filmmaker, which is really interesting. The Academy, though, is something different. I mean, this show is defined by the number of movies that have not been properly recognized by the Academy. So this feels perftly in line.
This is the most
that.
upsetting, I think, of all of them.
But it's a feel-bad movie.
Yeah.
The last 45 minutes of this movie are made to make you feel what it's coming like to come down off of cocaine. So it's like when you're watching this movie, the idea that this would somehow please crowds in a way more than Dances with Wolves, which is like the absolute, like, every box is checked as like, it's a star turn, it's a huge Titanic like achievement by one person. You can sell that idea. Hollywood loves Westerns. Hollywood loves these stories of like Western expansion and like this sort of that kind of thing. This is actually like the inverse of The Godfather. It is not supposed to make you feel like these people are relatable or that I understand the journey here. The journey is actually like, it's hollow. And that's what he wanted. He wanted you to feel that way.
We always talk about the nostalgia point with stuff. So this comes out in 1990, which is 18 years after The Godfather, 16 years after Godfather 2. So it's kind of the perfect time where those movies have taken a second life. People who grew up with it are passing it down to their now teenage kids, whatever it is. And I do think it got kind of linked to those movies, like, oh, it's a mob movie. It felt a little familiar to Scorsese. I think the diehards were like, I can't wait for this. But it's interesting, like I went through all the premiere magazines. They didn't write a piece about it leading up. It was just kind of thrown into the 1990 fall preview. There's a lot of movies that came out that year. It was an amazing movie year. That was the year of, we've covered it in the past, like Home Alone and Ghost and Pretty Woman. And the big movie that was coming out that December was Godfather 3.
Mm-hmm.
And Godfather 3 kind of overshadowed it in so many different ways. And there was so much at stake with Godfather 3. And meanwhile, the real linear successor of those movies was this movie. And I don't know if I don't remember enough at the time if people belatedly realized it or if they realized it immediately, but people knew immediately. We did Godfather 3 here, that it wasn't great. And I felt like people knew immediately with this movie, wow. But I think the rewatchability really helped with this.
I definitely agree.
Being able to understand why he made those decisions in the last 25 minutes specifically was the key.
It moves too fast for you to appreciate it fully on the first viewing. Like, I don't remember when I started to love this movie, but I do remember early on in my life when I would watch it, the exact moment in the movie where I started to feel uncomfortable or actually like dislike the movie in a weird way. And it's right when Karen visits Henry in jail and she's like, Paulie won't talk to me anymore. And I'm like, no. Because the whole movie is supposed to be that these people are all friends and hanging out and it's really cool and the music is amazing, right?
Yeah.
Like we're all going to be buddies and it's a family. And it's like, no, now it's all fluorescent overhead lighting and people looking bloated and pale. And even though now, at this point in my life, I'm like the second half might be better than the first half.
Yeah.
It's almost like Godfather 1 and 2 in one movie in that way. You know what I mean? Like that kind of rise and fall. But yeah, I mean, like it's such a complicated film to digest on the first pass.
That was what he wanted, right?
Yeah.
He was more interested in the downfall than the rise because he felt like not only did he not want to glorify it, but I don't know, Scorsese is a pretty dark guy sometimes. I think that's probably what appealed to him.
Well, I mean, most of the films that he makes have bummer endings, so it shouldn't be a surprise that a Scorsese movie ends in such a downbeat way. But I think even more than that, a lot of great films have downbeat endings, but they're usually much more operatic. You know, the films of the 70s, the Godfather films, for example, they do have... I would not say that The Godfather has a particularly uplifting ending.
No.
It's pretty dark and pretty brutal. But the difference is that the scale and the sort of like intensity and the high level nature of those lives lived makes it feel like you're watching something Shakespearean. Goodfellas he talks about this. It's about a foot soldier. It's about a regular guy inside of a crime family. It's not about the kingpin. It's not about the boss. It's not even about the boss's second in command. It's about just a guy, just another guy who found his way into this life. And invariably, people who get into this life, especially at this time in history, they have to pay for the choices that they make. And Scorsese is very much about like penance. He has all that Catholic guilt. He has all of this religiosity around all of his movies. Every crime that's committed essentially gets paid for in this movie.
But that's the thing is, you're right. Godfather ends with Michael taking over the family. And even though you have this pit in your stomach about everything that's happened with, like it's clearly happening with Kay and everything that's happened, his dad and Sonny and everything, it's a triumph, right? Like he's taking over the family. Like even if you're sad about like this kid who wanted to be a soldier or maybe become like a congressman or something, it still has like a little bit of a positive note at the end. I think Goodfellas, it's like, what was this all even for? So that you could live in Arizona or something and eat, ketchup instead of marinara sauce. Like that
morning paper is pretty appealing, I guess. Yeah, the other way
Henry Hill is supporting local newspapers. That's true.
The other way I was going to go with the opening question is this the most influential movie of the last 35 years? Because I think you make a case it was. You'd think just the little stuff. Like I was thinking, we'll get to it later, but the scene when Pesci and Liotta are outside the club because they're about to blow it up. And Pesci's trying to get him to go on the double date. He's like, come on.
Yeah. She's from the Five Towns.
And they're going
This
back
day
and
and
forth
age,
for 2
What
minutes.
the fuck is the world coming to?
I just never seen that in a movie before.
Yeah.
And David Chase is pretty open. Like, yeah, I'd say all of those scenes are what kind of created The Sopranos. I think Tarantino, I can't imagine how profound the effect of that is. He basically, that was probably the biggest thing. I don't want to say he ripped off, but it was like an homage. But it was the little stuff that The Godfather didn't have. My favorite part's The Godfather, what we've talked about in the past, where when he has that scene with his dad, when they're in the garden, and it's like these human scenes, these back and forth. Goodfellas manages to do that. Well, these guys are just acting abhorrently. And that's, I think, been more influential than I think anything we've seen in a movie in the last 35 years.
It's really interesting that a movie like this would be as influential too, because it does not really follow any of the rules of movies. There's no narrative arc really to the movie. There's no like true plot. There's not even really a main character. At a certain point in the movie, 25, 30 minutes into the movie, the voiceover just changes to Karen.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the fuck? And it's obviously very influenced by 60s European movies and 70s movies, the way that it's cut. It's very fast moving, and it's him applying his aesthetic, his ideas about how quickly a movie should move and what a life feels like, especially a life lived this way, onto a lot of those old skills. And so I think this movie and Pulp Fiction coming in a 5-year period basically sets the pace for what modern movies look and feel like. They move a lot faster. They're a lot chattier. They're a lot more comfortable with voiceover. They're a lot more comfortable shifting perspective to different people. It doesn't just have to be a hero's journey. It's a lot more ensemble stories, a lot of stories shifting from person to person. So I definitely agree. It's probably the most influential, in part because a lot of people that are essentially people from your age to my age have just watched this movie 100 times.
Yeah.
So it seeps into your blood at a certain point, and you can't help but be influenced by it.
But inimitable.
Yeah.
Only one person could make this movie, because only one person sees the world quite like this. Like, only one person mixes this sort of, like you were saying, this Catholic guilt, but also this like debased drug behavior, this mixture of like 1950s romanticism with like all the doo-wop, but also with like Cream and Harry Nilsson and just being coked out of your mind and driving around in circles in a Pontiac. Like, it's that collision of sensibilities. And then when you watch this movie, and everybody when I was growing up, like in the 90s, and it was just like, everybody's ripping off Scorsese. And you actually like watch Goodfellas and you're like, nothing looks like this. Nothing feels like this. Nobody knows how to use music this way. Like, everybody's like, oh, like you're just doing Goodfellas where you put this song over guys walking cool. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's not that.
Fuck out of here.
It's
Like,
not
you don't
that.
even know, like, he's switching 3 songs inside of one shot. He's like using the song because of what the song means, kind of adds like a level of depth to what the action is on screen, or it explains the
The
emotional.
Donovan song's the best
Yeah,
example of that.
or that he kissed me when they're walking to the Copa. Like, that
Yeah.
shot is not that shot without that song. Like, everything works as of a piece,
One of the things I really like about it too is, even though it is a movie about these really vile people, like almost everybody in the movie does pretty heinous shit, even all the way down to kids. They're doing some really tough, they're breaking the law and they're really defying the system. It's also just a very relatable movie about like ambition and striving and trying to get what you want. It like Henry, it's a careful what you wish for movie.
Yeah.
The reason the movie opens with that line for a very specific reason, for as long as I can remember. And it's all about aspiration. It's all about trying to get closer to the thing that he sees as achievement, as priority, as comfort. And he does get everything he wants, but as he's going through it, he has to make a lot of tough choices. He has to do a lot of things he doesn't want to do. And it's if you can pull yourself out of the kind of criminal element of it and the kind of like the angry and violent element of it, it is a relatable story. There's a reason that people like click into this movie so clearly.
Well, this is why I think it's the perfect. Its real partner movie is Wolf, like the movie that is Wolf of Wall Street, because I think it's got similar sensibility about basically how to make it in America, but then like it does show you what that costs at the end, and those are basically guys. Henry talks about it a lot. Jordan talks about it a lot in Wolf of Wall Street. It's just like, I don't want to wait in line. I want to figure out how to get the most while doing the least in my life. And that's different than what Vito Corleone wanted. Like, that's a different idea of what this was all about and what this sort of like the underworld and the family
Tradition
and our
and
thing.
family,
Yeah, right. It's more about like, no, we're a bunch of vampires, and this will eventually, our bill will come due. But until then, we're going to live the absolutely bacchanalian lifestyles.
A Bronx Tale is like the little brother of this movie. The Sopranos is the son. And I don't know what Pulp Fiction is. Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs are like the two crazy cousins.
Yeah.
And everything kind of ties into this. I mean, just a quick story. So I think I've talked before about when I bought a DVD player and I got a nicer TV in like 96 with bartending money.
Like a 28 inch? Just like
no, it's like a
sweet.
It's like a 48 inch.
Is it a Magnavox?
It might have been. And DVDs were starting to come out. And I remember making a list of all the movies I hoped would come out on DVD. And Goodfellas was whatever the top of it was like Goodfellas and Godfather. So Goodfellas comes out and it was double-sided. And they would do that sometimes with the DVDs. They would actually, for whatever reason, they would only store like an hour of information or whatever. And then you would have to kind of walk over, eject it, and flip it. And I was so fucking mad. And I had so little going on in my life at the time, right? I'm like this struggling writer. I'm working a thing. And it was like getting this Goodfellas DVD was probably going to be the highlight of my week that week. And it was like, what is this? How could they do this?
Yeah.
To this movie, of all the movies, to have the double-sided DVD.
Where did the break? Do you remember where the break happened?
No, because it made me so mad to watch it. I only watched it like once. Everything about it they did wrong. So when they ran it back in 2004, I remember I handed out Goodfellas quotes for some football column or basketball column because I was so excited. It was like, all right, finally you're giving this movie, it's one of the most important movies of my life. Finally, you've given it the respect of a decent DVD. But those were the stakes by the mid-90s. I think this movie very quickly became the ultimate rewatchable. You could jump in anytime.
Do you remember when you first saw it? Because I don't have a recollection of my first time seeing it.
I saw it in college.
Was it in the theater?
Yeah.
So, I mean, to the point that we're making here about how this movie, really over the course of like 10 years, it became clear that it was like maybe the most important movie. But did you know?
Sooner than 10. It was by the mid-90s, you knew.
But in 1990, like in September 1990, did you know, like, this is it, we got it?
No, and I will fully admit, I thought it was amazing, but I also thought, I thought he went for it a little too aggressively, especially in the last 25 minutes. And when we left, we're like, man, why'd they do the helicopter sequence that way?
Yeah.
I was just like, and then it was like.
And then your one friend on cocaine was like, I'll tell you why.
No, and even like stuff like the freeze frame stuff, it was like, man, he really put out all the tricks. It was really, he really wanted you to know this was a Scorsese movie. And it really wasn't until the block, renting it and watching it again and kind of, it took like 3 times.
That's the thing though. It's like the best rewatchables are the ones that were like pay you back for your scholarship on it though. The best rewatchables are the ones that where you're like, oh yeah, you know what? He made a choice to put the bat scene in the first. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like rather than start with Henry as a kid. It's like everything is a choice. Every freeze frame is a choice. Every song is a choice. And like that's why like even now after seeing it God knows how many times, I was speechless all weekend rewatching it because I'm like, I can't believe like how nostalgic it is to watch it because you just remember
it's a warm blanket.
Saying lines of dialogue or like when when he's driving around and all those songs are playing while he's driving around at the end of the movie and you're just like, oh my God, I can't remember the first time I heard Jump Into the Fire. This is awesome. But you're also just like, oh my God, I completely forgot that this is how he does this shot or this is how they do this cut or that Spider's behind the bar and that he's in front of the bar. It's like all that stuff.
Spider's amazing.
And you just, every single time this time, it was like being with an old friend.
Well, I found like with De Niro's performance, it took me 20 years to fully understand that this was probably one of the 3 most important performances of his career. Yeah. And I don't think I would have said that even in like 2000 or 2005, but as this movie is now 32 years old or 31 and a half years old for us, like De Niro's the one that jumps out to me now and just all the stuff he's doing. Pesci, I know, is amazing and he deserved to win the Oscar, but just for where this ranks in the whole De Niro, I was going to do this later, I might as well do this now. Where this ranks in the whole, De Niro could do so many different things as an actor. And this specific guy, he kind of was like a piece of Midnight Run. There's a little bit of the Raging Bull guy. Like he takes little pieces, but this specific guy, he was like obsessed with being like the real Jimmy, like obsessed. All the research is like De Niro kind of lost his mind as he was filming this.
There's stories that he was calling Henry Hill 7 or 8 times a day to ask him questions about Jimmy the Gent. What did Jimmy really do? How did he hold his cigarette? How did he wear his shoes?
Like with the
Right.
the left hand kind of in this
obsessive about like what he wore. You know, and obsessive about like when to show the tattoos and how his hair should look in 1970
to catch up on the pasta.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all human behavior, right? Like there's obviously this incredible amount of mythology around De Niro as one of the most beloved and accomplished actors of the last 50 years. And at a certain point, it becomes like self-parodic. It's like kind of a joke. And especially having seen him do comedies for the last 15 years and a lot of mediocre crime movies, you kind of forget what it is that he's able to do. But it's like entirely observational. It's like it's the sum of 1,000 little choices that clearly, and when you read about it, it kind of like flatters your sensibilities where you're like, oh, he was actually making a choice there.
Yeah.
He did actually
He
see
wanted to know
something.
how they held shot glasses. Like, and the thing that is that like, we remember it and it becomes like baked in gestures. Like, I remember friends being like, oh, you insulted him a little bit. And if people are watching this on camera, I'm doing the little marionette thing that he does when he says that. He decided to do that. He wasn't just like, that's just like a thing. He wanted to know how Jimmy drank. I think I don't know what the competition would be. I think it's one of the scariest characters I've ever seen on screen. I think Jimmy is the cream shot of him smoking. I'm like, that's pure evil. Like this guy will eventually kill every single person who lives around him to make sure that he comes out on top.
Some good laughing from him in this movie. Different styles of laughing.
Yeah.
I have an early Apex Mountain for kicking. I think it's one of the great kicking performances I've ever seen.
I had greatest De Niro moment. I'm gonna give you the nominees. I have some bunch of special categories in this. The no, you insult him a little bit. You insult him a little bit. The Billy Bat stomping a second man in off the top rope comes in.
Yeah, they were like the Legion of Doom there. You know, it was like Hawk following up
Everything
Animal.
he says, it's just like Billy, drinks are on the house.
Egging on Tommy with Spider. Oh, it is that whole thing. You mentioned the slow motion when he's deciding to whack Maury, which I just don't know how many actors pull that scene off. And you can read in the research about the movie where they were just like, Scorsese's like, hey, I'm gonna do the slow-mo thing with you. I'm just gonna just be thinking about stuff and kind of thinking about how you're gonna kill Maury, and I'm gonna come in and just do your thing. And fucking, who else does that?
He does a couple of very small things in that sequence. One, obviously, he takes a drag off the cigarette, and it's like Satan is on screen. You're like, this guy is gonna really kill everyone here. And then he like wrinkles his brow and closes one eye a little bit more than the other. And it's almost like he's like sizing up what's the gun he's going to use or the knife.
He's also having a separate
pretending to listen. Yeah, he's pretending to listen to somebody. I mean, wow, it's just awesome.
Yeah.
By the way, he played Satan already. 1986 in Angel Heart. So it's like, this guy is somehow worse than Lou Cypher.
I forgot about Lou. His name is Lou Cypher.
Two more.
Terrible.
The phone booth scene. When after Tommy gets whacked.
I think that's the best explosive De Niro performance he's ever given. The best, because there's two versions, right? There's Heat, where he's whispering the whole movie. You know, you can barely understand what the hell he's saying. And then there's Jake LaMotta, where he's just over the top and all power. And that is like the most heartbreaking thing in the movie to me. Is there's tons of great stuff between Karen and Henry, but when he realizes that his friend has been killed and also that this whole world that they've built for themselves is a house of cards and it's all coming down and Tommy's gone and he smashes the phone and then he kicks the thing over and he like, he does the half cry where he like, it's just crushing.
Well, the best part is he's already killed 8 of his own friends. So it's like, hey, dude.
He's a
you kind of opened the floodgates here, buddy. And then the last one is when he's telling Lorraine Bracco to go get the Dior coats.
Just right down there.
No, a little further. No, that way. Those 6. I don't know what the greatest one is. I think my personal favorite is the slow motion for those 6 De Niro
the
moments.
Smoking.
The slow motion
He does
smoking.
a cupping thing with the cigarette.
I just feel like that's a 1-on-1. He's the only actor in my lifetime who could have done it.
One
Maybe
more.
Brando.
One more jumps out to me, which is when after Henry gets the first pinch, and he meets him right after he leaves
Puts
from the lawyer. He puts his
pocket.
arm around, he puts the money in his pocket, and he says, you just learned the 2 most important things in life. That scene, too, is unbelievable.
So he had Midnight Run right before this movie, which is another one of my favorite De Niro. And this is, I don't know if we knew he could give, I'm not going to say these were normal performances, but he had kind of gotten the reputation at this point as every De Niro movie was going to be some sort of swing.
Like the way Daniel Day-Lewis has now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why Jack Walsh, which when we did the pod, that was such an important one where it's like, oh, here's De Niro just being a likable leading man with sarcastic, playing off Grodin. Didn't know he could do this, and then he does this. And
I think the crucial thing is like, and we're going to get to so much half-assed internet research stuff because we actually did our research in this one, but the...
it was fully asked.
The fact that he recognized that he was too old for Henry, to play Henry.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that he still was like, but Jimmy's interesting. Like Jimmy is somebody I would want to play. To have Robert De Niro, and we're talking peak De Niro, be like, I want to essentially be the third or fourth lead. If you look at...
But top billed.
And in the middle of the poster, right? But Jimmy...
That's how I want to be like 6 years from now. Like less work, but I'm still top billed.
Oh my God. We do like Predator 2 and it's just like...
I just come in for 10 minutes, but it's still like the Rewatchables with Bill Simmons.
Like, you just do the ad reads.
Some of the stuff, we mentioned how meticulous he was with Jimmy. You said he called Hill several times a day. I don't even know how I'd think to ask this, but when they have the pasta scene at 4 a.m, he's like, how would Jimmy eat the pasta? And somebody was like, he'd probably have ketchup. And if you watch it, he's like spinning the ketchup like it's
disgusting.
I don't know, it's like a thing of pepper or something. He realized every scene had to have
if you're talking about best De Niro moments, I do think we may need to have the hoof.
The hoof.
Is
the hoofs. Yeah, you're right. Every scene had to have a new outfit. He decided that Jimmy's motivation was only going to be the next score.
Mm-hmm.
So you never really see him interact with women at all in this. There's never some sort of paramour. There's no strip joint scene. There's no flirting. He's
it's like he has a woman, but it's not important.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't even know who it is. The best one, though.
He's a thief.
He had the scene when Jimmy hands out money. He didn't like the way the fake money felt. He wanted to feel more like Jimmy, so he asked the guy, the prop master, like, I need real money. So the guy had to take out $2,000 of his own money, give it to De Niro, and then make sure he got all of it back. Because De Niro's a maniac. It's like, this fake money didn't feel real enough to me. I need real money.
It's when he's playing craps, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what CR does before every Rewatchables.
No question.
He's like, Craig, I need real money.
The 10 best lessons from Goodfellas. I wrote down for you guys.
Okay.
So lessons from the movie. No, people don't realize Goodfellas has lessons.
Like life lessons?
Life lessons.
Okay.
Okay.
Life lesson number 1. Don't whack a made man.
No.
Can't do it.
I wouldn't do it.
Good tip.
Yeah.
You can whack people. Just if they're made, don't do that because it'll come back to bite you.
But you can whack people.
You can whack people, just not a made man.
Metaphorically.
After you commit a massive heist, don't buy anything fancy.
Yeah.
Lay low. Keep it low for a little while.
What if I put it in my mother's name?
Still.
Not,
wait a couple weeks,
okay.
Sean. I told you, lay low. Lay low.
But it's in my mother. It's my mother's name.
Whenever you need money, rob an airport. It's better than Citibank.
Easy enough.
Yeah.
I think that's changed slightly in the last 20 years.
I don't know.
Yeah. The pregnability of airports.
Nobody goes to jail unless they want to.
That's one of my favorite lines of dialogue in this whole movie.
Lesson number 5, don't make a mob boss your silent restaurant partner. It's never going to work.
Key tip.
He's going to steal. He's never going to pay, and eventually he's going to blow up the place.
To be fair, Paulie does say, what do I know about the restaurant business?
Yeah. He was right.
What's the name of your bar going to be again?
The Bamboo Lounge 2.
The Re-Bamboo.
It was CR's Shrimp and Sports. That was the sports bar I wanted to have in 3rd grade. When they asked me what I wanted to do. CR's Shrimp and Sports. What do you want?
That's great. I would go there.
Wasn't there something like Club Chrissy's or something too that you were going to do? Uncle Chrissy's?
I think Kevin Clark took Club Chrissy off him.
Okay.
He's got Club Kevin.
Solid. Don't use Coke if you're also selling Coke. A lot of people miss that step.
But use Coke.
No.
But just not if you're selling it.
Don't use Coke if you're selling Coke.
But
I'm not judging your Coke use other than that. I'm just saying if you're selling it, don't use it.
This is helpful.
So you wouldn't have been a Sandy guy?
No. If you really hate someone, shoot them in the face so their mother can't give them an open casket funeral.
I've always said that.
Good.
Yeah, I've been saying that for years.
Good lesson there. Never rat on your friends. Always keep your mouth shut. We've had that
those guys
dating back to
break
Grandland.
that rule so many times.
They really do. If your new boyfriend pistol whips someone right in front of you, you might not want to end up with him.
But what if you were attracted to that?
No.
Not a good idea?
That says more about you.
Okay.
If you're part of a crew, nobody ever tells you that they're going to kill you. Remember that, both of you.
That's true, which is, it's funny because we're here obviously to kill Chris. That's why we got together for this pod.
Oh, no! And then a bonus lesson, don't get divorced. You just got to make it work.
What
Don't
are you
get divorced.
You're not going to divorce her?
You just got to make it work.
Animale?
She'll kill you.
Go back home. So those are the lessons. So 1991 Oscars, nominated for 6 awards. Seems low.
Seems low.
Nominated for Best Picture, Best Director. Pesci won for Best Supporting Actor, gave, I think, one of the 5 shortest speeches of all time. He said, "It's my privilege, thank you," and walked off. No Liotta nomination, no De Niro nomination, no Sorvino nomination.
Crimes Against Humanity.
We'll go in order. Scorsese. Well, first of all, with Best Picture, Dances with Wolves win. The other nominees were Awakenings, Ghost, Godfather 3, and Goodfellas. I don't know what to say.
Honest question. When is the last time you've watched Dances with Wolves?
Oh, 20 years?
Got to be at least 20 years, right?
I think I saw a piece of it on TNT before a basketball game, but yeah.
Like yesterday?
No, I mean like in the last 10 years or so. When's the Awakenings pod?
I brought this movie up like 4 or 5 times.
Angry. Best Director, Costner wins. Coppola for Godfather 3, Scorsese, Stephen Frears for The Grifters, Schroeder for Reverse.
Sean,
Reversal of
Stephen
Fortune.
Frears actually should have won.
The Grifters is good.
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Amazing. I was just waiting for you to do like the zag. It's not Scorsese or Costner.
I would have been fine with it.
So Scorsese's Oscars history, which Sean knows. Ordinary People beats him, Robert Redford.
Raging Bull.
That was terrible. It was the actor who parachuted in off his little actor mountain and directed a movie, and the Academy.
He turned out to be a good director.
Yeah.
I like Robert Redford's movies.
He shouldn't have beaten Raging Bull.
Raging Bull was like an extraordinary accomplishment in the moment.
Yeah, and
in the moment,
Tale of
people
the
were
Tape
like,
would
wow.
suggest Scorsese is a better
So
director.
within about 5 years, people are like, that was kind of fucked up. And now it happens again. Another actor parachutes out of Actor Mountain, makes a thing. And it was almost like the Academy rewarding the actor for like, wow, I didn't realize you could do this.
And the conventional wisdom, I guess, going into Oscar night that night was that it was going to be a split. It was going to be a picture director split, and Scorsese would win director because he was crestfallen about it.
Well, they made it up for him with The Departed, which we've discussed on this podcast. And I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
I'm fine with the makeup call. But I do think if he wins this one, I'm not sure who wins in 06.
You see stuff, though, happening with the Oscars. Like, this year, Frances McDormand won her 3rd. You and Wesley talked about that on your show. Mahershala Ali won his 2nd a couple of years ago. Like, people get multiple Oscars that you wouldn't think necessarily have that many. And forget about the fact that, like, Kubrick and Sidney Lumet and people like that never won Best Director. Like, Martin Scorsese probably should have 3 Oscars. Like, he is the most significant American filmmaker we've had in decades. So it's weird that they made him wait until he was 68 to get one, and now he's probably only going to have one. Maybe he'll get one for the movie he's making right now.
Killers of the Flower Moon.
But it's weird.
Yeah, like MJ won 6 MVPs and he should have won 8. But he still won 6 MVPs because people are like, that guy's the best right now. Here's another MVP. It's weird that it didn't happen with Scorsese. All right, so that was travesty number 1. That is top 3 or 4 all time.
It's a bad one.
Then we go to Best Actor.
I would argue that travesty is like why you guys talk about the Oscars so much, is because of whether or not it's an accurate sort of snapshot of what was a good movie or
because all the real Oscar crimes happened 89 to 94 when people really started following this stuff and caring about this stuff. There were just some heinous crimes every year, and then the internet starts and we could whine about it on message boards with people, and we were off.
Two more that came along that kind of kept that energy up, I think, is Shakespeare in Love over Saving Private Ryan started it all over again. And then I think Crash over Brokeback Mountain revived it. But every 7 to 10 years, you get one where you're like, what the fuck are they doing?
What just happened?
Yeah.
Best Actor, Jeremy Irons wins. Costner, De Niro, Depardieu, and Richard Harris, I like the field. But De Niro's nominated for Awakenings. That's his Oscar nomination this year, was Awakenings, during the height of people playing characters with something wrong with them.
But this is just exactly what the Academy was valuing at the time.
Okay, so let me ask you about this, though, because what category should De Niro be nominated in? Because there's very few roles that I've ever seen in a movie like this where top billed, not the main character, not even the second main character, not even arguably the third main character, if you include Tommy. So he's this satellite orbiting the movie.
I think it should have gone Liotta and then 2 supporting actors for De Niro and Pesci. And I love Sorvino, but he's the one who gets inched out here.
All right. Well, let's do Liotta first. Liotta has to be in that category.
So Liotta, this time
has to be.
This time watching the movie,
it's unbelievable.
This time watching
what
the
were
movie,
they doing?
I was like, Liotta is an absolute fucking comet.
He's a genius.
Movie. I could not believe how good he was, and I think that you go into this movie with like some of the psychological trappings of like, this is the role that Al Pacino they should make him Al Pacino. Like the thing that he should have a 30-year career of being the great American actor after this role.
Yeah.
And he obviously doesn't. But when you go back and he's against 2 or 3 of the best actors of their generation, some of the best actors we've ever seen. But when I watched it this time especially, I was like, he's blowing people off the screen in this movie. Like he is amazing. And I think it's aged really, really well.
Yeah, it's like it's like somebody going on the dream team with Bird and Magic and MJ and Barkley, but it was somebody who wasn't an all-star and they're just hanging with them and doing stuff.
Right.
But it's not Christian Leitner doing, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
somebody who, it's like if they let Drazen Petrovic play on the dream team and you'd be like, where's this guy been?
Right.
You know, like how does he so seem? I think that this is true of Lorraine Bracco too. I think both of them are hang with these people who've been doing this for 30 years
No
who
question.
are incredibly charismatic.
Well, Liotta should have been nominated. Jeremy Irons is really good in Reverse.
He is good. That's not a bad win. It's just circumstantial.
Best actress, nobody's getting it unless you want to make the case for Lorraine Bracco, who's in the whole movie basically, and
is the co-narrator of the movie.
So with that year, it was Kathy Bates wins for Misery, Angelica Houston Grifters, Roberts Pretty Woman, Meryl Streep Postcards from the Edge, Joanne Woodward Mr. and Mrs. Bridge. Those are actually 5 good performances.
No disrespect
know.
to Joanne Woodward, I probably would have nominated Lorraine Bracco there.
Yeah, but that they always have the old,
Yeah.
legacy. This might be
It's
your
hard
last
to
movie.
it's hard to
Here's
argue. I
nomination.
mean,
Well,
Postcards
but she gets nominated though.
Yeah.
She's just for best supporting actress.
Yeah.
And she loses to Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from a pure screen time perspective, is she in the movie significantly less than Kathy Bates is in Misery? I don't know. I mean, Kathy Bates is not in the first 10 minutes of Misery, and then she's only in scenes where she's coming into the room. So I don't know.
Supporting actor, Pesci wins. Nobody else is nominated. The other nominees were Bruce Davison and Longtime Companion, which was a good movie. Andy Garcia. We all like that Godfather 3 performance, but not in, hey, you're one of the 5 Oscar nominees.
I think we were like, this is actually like a pretty great performance, but it's hard to see him get this over Sorvino.
What am I going to do with this guy?
Graham Greene for Dances with Wolves, and then the bad one is Al Pacino as Dick Tracy. I'm fine bumping Garcia and Pacino and putting Sorvino and De Niro. De Niro has to be. De Niro not being on here is like kind of incredible. I don't understand it.
The Pacino nomination is bizarre.
Yeah, and
that's like a weird Warren Beatty service or something. I don't know.
Yeah, Warren Beatty, because he has other Oscar stuff. Like Bugsy was another one that did well in the Oscars, and there was like this weird gravitational pull with Warren Beatty. But at this point, we knew Pacino and De Niro were the 2 best actors we had. It's so weird to me that Pacino got the respect.
I said this to you the other day. I think it's just that De Niro had all of his like award season eggs in the Awakenings basket. You know, like the studio was pushing that performance. That was a transformation. You know, he played a person who was
softer, sweeter.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was an uncommon role for him, as opposed to, you know, oh, he reunited with the guy he made Mean Streets with, and this is kind of an update on the Charlie character or the Johnny Boy
the
character.
Jimmy character doesn't really get any like if you think about Daniel Day-Lewis won for Gangs of New York, right?
No.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, like, he doesn't even get a speech like that. He doesn't even get like a kind of takeout kind of moment. It's all like these little micro moments throughout.
I hate doing this, but let's do it. If you had to give that best supporting actor over again, would you give it to Pesci or De Niro?
I would give it to De Niro.
I would give it to Pesci. I don't think the movie works without Pesci. And I think what Pesci does is completely singular. I think, now this might seem blasphemous, but if you put Pacino in the Jimmy role, it would still work. There is no person you can find who can replace what Pesci does.
I think I agree with Sean.
Okay.
But I think
I don't know if
it's just
Pacino
an unfortunate...
can stay within the lane lines the way that Conway does, the way that De Niro does.
It would be a very subdued performance for Pacino.
Yeah.
But we saw Pacino give performances like that in the 70s. Pesci doesn't have a comp.
Also, let's
Pesci
have
is Randy Moss.
A quorum of the Irishman here. Who do you believe is Jimmy the Gent, the Irishman? De Niro or Pacino? Pacino is not Irish.
Right.
It's just impossible to see.
Yeah. Yes, that is true.
I'm sure he could do it, but I'm just saying it's like if you tell me his
Do
name
either
is
of them look Irish at all?
yeah, but I just believe that De Niro is Irish
Because
in
you've
this
seen him
movie.
play it, though, 'cause he's so good at playing
I
it.
know.
Pacino would be like, I was having coffee with Johnny Roast Beef half an hour ago. All right, so this movie was based on Nick Pileggi's 1985 book, Wise Guy.
Did you read it?
No, but I did order it. Now I want to read it. I got excited. I realized I
a
had
lot
never
of
read
the
it since
voiceover
college.
is the book.
Can I tell my Pileggi story?
Let's do it. Pileggi? It's not Pileggi, it's Pileggi?
Pileggi.
My bad.
So I grew up on Long Island in Huntington Station, across the street from a family called the Natalis, Dominic and Angela Natali. Beautiful couple, beautiful family. Their daughter, Denise, who is older than me, started dating a guy named Paul Pileggi. Paul Pileggi was Nick Pileggi's nephew. Nick Pileggi would be across the street from my house. We're very close to this family.
Did you go over there with a gun to pistol whip him, or you just kind of eyeball them?
You touched my sister again. You're dead.
Just brought a little sauce. But so when this movie came out, I was only 8 years old when this movie came out. But to my family, there was a level of awareness. And because of Henry Hill, my father was a narcotics detective in Nassau County. Henry Hill was arrested by a narcotics detective in Nassau County. This movie was threaded into my life. Goodfellas, I told my dad yesterday, we're doing Goodfellas. And he immediately started quoting the Bo Dietl narcotics detective who arrests Hill at the end of the movie, because it was such a part of our life. It's so in our life. And I meant
are you making a cake?
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think of what line. He definitely quoted one of the more intense.
We calls him Fucko.
Yeah. Attica, dickhead.
Fucko is used by multiple characters in this movie. I don't know. This is a good fucko renaissance in the early 90s.
But all to say, like, when Goodfellas came out, it was a huge deal. And Wise Guy was a book that was in my house when I was growing up. And it was a huge bestseller in the 80s. And then obviously, I'm sure we'll talk about My Blue Heaven, but that's also very much related to this, which came out, I guess, maybe the year before that, because Nick Pileggi's wife, Nora Ephron, who was friends with Henry Hill, wrote a movie that is basically about Henry Hill.
It's a comedy about Henry Hill, essentially. Yeah.
And so, that whole world was being captured in such a profound way on screen, in a way that, like, it really hadn't before. The Godfather's made up. These stories are not made up.
How much, you're an interesting guy.
Thanks.
You're into the Kennedy assassination. You got a lot of interest. I was waiting for that. Are you a big, like, New York underworld historian person? Like, do you know much about the Lucchese family or anything?
But
it's the real life elements of this?
It's a hole in my resume.
Okay. Maybe that's like for your Twilight years,
No, it's a hole that I'll be fulfilling at some point.
It'll happen. Ominous.
It'll happen. No, it'll happen.
What do you, like, you'll be joining a crime family?
No, it'll be like a 3-month thing where I'll just read all the books.
Yeah, all the Peter Moss books.
It'll need some catalyst though, like a documentary or something.
There's a lot of them about those families. I think the books are really good though. Like the books about all the 5 families are really interesting.
I always forget when I'm watching this movie that quick line about Appalachian and Crazy Joe. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is real. This fucking happened.
Well, Pileggi and Scorsese wrote the script, $25.1 million budget, made $47.1 million. Our guy Raj came through.
Yes.
4 stars, best of 1990. Quote, no finer film has ever been made about organized crime, not even The Godfather. Raj coming in hot.
I think what he wrote, the sentences right before that sentence, I think sum it up. The feeling that we have. He wrote, most films, even great ones, evaporate like mist once you've returned to the real world. They leave memories behind, but their reality fades fairly quickly. Not this film, which shows America's finest filmmaker at the peak of his form. That was what you opened with. Is this him at his best?
Yeah, and I think Scorsese needed this because can we do Scorsese in the 80s now really quick and then we'll do the categories? Yeah. Because there's a lot of cocaine.
Well, he's done with it by this point.
No, but I mean that I think derailed it a little bit, and then he got it back together. There's Raging Bull, and then what happens after Raging Bull?
I think that Chris and I love a lot of these movies from the 80s. We've talked about them a lot over the years, but it's a series of stops and starts. The King of Comedy comes 2 years after Raging Bull. And while I think it is absolutely one of the best movies he's ever made, it was a failure. It was a flop. People didn't get it.
People got mad about it. Mm-hmm. There was like a fuck you kind of aftermath to that.
And that's a real acid-dipped movie, that has a lot to say about fame and what people want out of life. And it's an interesting movie to pair with Goodfellas because it's about somebody who doesn't get what he wants and has to commit crime to get what he wants, and then he does. And that movie doesn't work. He tries to mount The Last Temptation of Christ, a book he had been wanting to make for years and years into a movie. And he's about to get it done. And then at the last minute, it gets taken away from him. So he pivots. He makes After Hours.
Good movie.
Which is a great movie.
Great movie.
Yeah.
And a really fun movie and a really cool New York movie and a really funny movie.
Yeah.
But different from a lot of Scorsese movies. And it's small and it's received as a small movie. It's not a massive hit, but it's very cool. It's very downtown New York. And then he takes a paycheck job and makes one of the coolest sports movies ever. Makes The Color of Money, which, I know it's one of Chris's favorite movies of all time.
It's on the schedule.
Thank you.
October, November is the anniversary.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I rewatched that to prepare for this and I was like, holy fuck, I may have underrated this one.
I watched it recently
It's on
and
Hulu.
was shocked by
Yeah.
how good it was.
It's amazing. Holds up brilliantly.
Kind of like staggeringly good. I felt like I just spent the last 20 years underrating it.
And so he kind of starts getting his mojo back a little bit after that because that movie did pretty well. It was obviously a sequel to The Hustler.
And Newman wins. So
right.
it's like this guy can make things happen for big stars.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
And also Cruise ascending into his true movie stardom.
Well, and also Cruise really wanting to work with him because now this is the first generation of real stars who have grown up on Scorsese.
Here's the coolest thing about doing all the reading for this pod is you see, because of the way movies were made back then, the favor he does here pays him off back here. So it's like working with Cruise gets him in good with Terry Semel or whatever it is.
Yep.
I can't remember the exact domino falls, but it was like this whole Mike Ovitz thing about, putting Cruise in Color of Money.
Yeah.
And then Michael Ovitz helps him make Last Temptation. Last Temptation is cleared so he can make Goodfellas. Like all this stuff is like, it's an awesome little chemical exchange.
Exactly. It's like a daisy chain of connectivity. So then he does finally get to make The Last Temptation of Christ in 1988. And it's a fascinating movie. It's a complicated film. It's a fictional representation of what could have happened with Jesus Christ and what he was thinking at the time of his crucifixion and a lot of other things. It's a little bit different. It falls much more clearly into that like Kundun silence spiritual section.
Good soundtrack.
It does have some good music.
Peter
Gabriel, yeah.
And
he's basically a marked man after that.
It's
There's
not.
it's pretty controversial.
It's not a hit, and it's an object of derision amongst the Catholic community.
People got really mad when that movie came out too.
Yeah.
And so that it put him on the back heel a little bit.
Yeah.
And I wonder if he made the choice to make this movie out of a sense of fear and needing to go to somewhere familiar to return to form, because he has to kind of bounce back, because it's been a really tumultuous decade for him, especially after from 73 through 80. People are like, this is the next John Ford. This is the next person who goes into history books.
That strikes me the most is that I love After Hours and I love Color of Money, and I really like Last Temptation of Christ. I just don't watch it as much as those other two movies. Is the speed of Goodfellas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There is a feeling like he jumps and maybe even creates or starts the 90s. It is how it's how human brains actually operate. We can move much faster than, if you watch After Hours, there's some really kinetic sequences, but then there are lots of parts of After Hours that are kind of what the fuck is going on here? And this guy's walking down the street again, and now it's happening. And Color of Money has some very slow sequences of Paul Newman just sitting in a pool hall, and I think that when you watch Goodfellas, it feels not modern, but maybe more contemporary, and now almost feels faster than what we are even capable of watching. If a movie came out that was as fast as Goodfellas now, I would be is the filmmaker on meth? I don't even understand how somebody could work like this.
The thing is, though, because it's set in a specific time, not now, I think that helps with the timelessness of it. And that was the case for The Godfather for a while. But now The Godfather, it does feel like a movie that came out a while ago, even though obviously we all love it. This movie, I don't know. It feels like there's not that much where you could say, oh, now we have the technology where that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
It's pretty 2021-ish.
It's the beneficiary of the recent history effect, where there are people at the end of the movie who are still alive. It's very similar to Dazed and Confused.
Yeah.
They're that's the 70s. I know the 70s. The Godfather is the 1940s. You're I don't know. Do I know 5 people who were alive in 1940?
Well, there's something about, I would say this for After Hours, not so much for After Hours, but when I watch Goodfellas and when I watch Color of Money and you see all that BQE in Goodfellas and all the outer borough stuff in Goodfellas, and then it's New York, New Jersey in the beginning of Color of Money, that stuff hasn't changed. That still that's the way the sky looks over the New Jersey Turnpike. Like that's the way Brooklyn and Queens looks like, kind of. And that I don't know, like just because there's a different like technology and there's different ways of communicating, like he just captures that area of the world like perfectly. And he obviously knows it like by the back of his hand. And you know, my favorite thing about Goodfellas is just like it's an anthropological movie. It's just like everything in it is this catalog of like how people lived, how they dressed, how they ate, how they talked, what music they liked, how they got into nightclubs or what they drank at bars. That stuff never changes. That stuff never gets old.
All right, most rewatchable scene. Wow.
So I have the movie. I literally have like every scene in this movie.
I tried to really narrow it down and go with the obvious ones, but got to shout out the opening scene just at the top, just because it was unlike anything. And it breaks rules right away where there's foreshadowing and there's narration, which are two things that in the wrong hands always fail. And then you hear him go, as far as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And it's just like, even all these years later, when you see that first thing, it's just so perfect. Every choice he makes in that, and there's mystery, and it's like, you don't know what's in the trunk, and then they go back, and then all of a sudden he's fucking stabbing you with a knife. And it's just a really crazy way to start a movie that shouldn't have worked, and it worked.
Freeze frame on Henry's face, rags to riches, blaring.
Yep.
You hear that brass.
Saul Bass.
And then the title sequence comes on, and you're like, what the fuck? I've never seen a movie open this way.
It also starts the cognitive dissonance because Tommy stabs Bats, and then Jimmy shoots him. And then he says all he ever wanted, as far back as he can remember, he's always wanted to be a gangster. So you're just like, why?
Exactly.
Why would you want to be in this situation? And then we find out.
Again, I'm only going with the OGs here. So this was on the fringe when he breaks his cherry, young Henry, and they come in and all the guys are waiting for him. It's a shorter scene, but I love that part. I put that in What's Age
Henry's first pinch. I wrote down for sure.
You're a funny guy. This is, I think, one of the most iconic scenes of the last 35 years.
The whole sequence. The outside the bamboo lounge, into the bamboo lounge, introducing all of the guys, the rogues.
I had that in What's Age the Best.
Okay.
Oh, you want to go the whole sequence?
I think the whole thing.
All right, fuck it. Let's put it in there.
Because this movie is like the scenes themselves are pretty short. So like the sequences are actually the ones, you know?
Well, then we got to go with the guys that he introduces. So, because I had that for What's Age the Best.
Are we going to do a draft of the guys?
Well,
power rank?
I wrote everyone down because I love when we meet everybody. We meet in order: Anthony Stabile, Frankie Carbone, Mo Black's brother, Fat Andy. His guy's Frankie the Wop, Freddie No Nose, and then Pete the Killer, who was Sally Balls' brother, Mikey Francesi, and Jimmy Two Times. But we don't get to meet Mo Black, Nicky Eyes, Joe Buddha, Stack Edwards, Johnny Roast Beef. We don't get to meet them yet. So, favorite nickname, just go. Out of all those.
Pete the Killer.
Pete the Killer.
Pete the Killer. Also, I would like to throw in some of their catchphrases. I obviously I'm going to get the papers wins.
Right.
But hey, I wanted to see that guy. I'm going to go see him. Or what is that? Like that line? Like there are like all these little lines that those guys do. And then the best part about that is that breaks with like, it's like, what's the POV here? It's like this weird, it's like a documentary basically. And each line that they're giving is, this is how Henry remembers what this guy was like, what he said. And it just creates this sort of like, oh, okay, so this is this guy's memory of these moments in a way.
So Chris went with Sally Balls' brother, Pete the Killer. Who did you go with for best nickname?
It has to be Mo Black's brother, Fat Andy. It's not Mo Black's brother. It's not Fat Andy. It's Mo Black's brother, Fat Andy, which is the funniest way to introduce somebody. And then that guy, of course.
You're like, oh yeah, of course, Mo Black.
Yeah. Like, who the fuck is Mo Black? Where's he?
My favorite was Frankie the Wop. Now, I'm half Italian, so I can cover this effectively. Wop is an old school nickname, not complimentary. Dago's the worst Italian thing. Wop's probably second. Everyone in this group's Italian, and they looked at Frankie and they're like, this guy is Frankie the Wop. Like, he was so Italian. He's so Italian, they had to call him the Wop, but they're all Italians. Like, how Italian do you have to be nicknamed the Wop in this group?
I think an underrated one is Anthony Stabile. What's up, guy?
Anthony Stabile is a bigger part of this movie than I remember.
He's in
Yeah,
four
he really
scenes.
is.
Yeah, he's basically running the bamboo lounge when they're going in and out.
Anthony Stabile. So that leads to your funny guy. The story. Big, what are you doing here? I thought I told you to fuck your mother. That's where we're just off going. And then that leads to the you're just funny. You know the way you tell the story. I'm sure we're going to play the clip of that. So many good moments here. First of all, they ad-lib basically everything, and the guys around them didn't know what was going on.
Yeah,
which was
and they
this
kept
weird
it in a medium
Scorsese
shot
trick.
rather than being like, we're going to do a bunch of setups. We're just going to do 2. Yeah.
So they basically going back. They do that whole thing, and the only people that know are Pesci, Liotta, and Scorsese, and nobody else in the scene knows what's going on. Which is why if you've seen this enough times, you're watching the other guys. And they're kind of get deer in the headlights. At some point, they're kind of like, "What's happening?"
Look at Nick. Next time you watch this movie, look at Nicky Eyes' face when Pesci is talking. He's like,
yeah. No, and what does he say? No, Anthony, he's a big boy. He knows what he said.
Right. So there's the I almost had him. You stutter and prick you.
"You stutter and prick you."
I don't know if you'll hold up under questioning.
I don't know who the greatest thing is because Pesci. This is like the most famous scene he's ever had.
And this fucking happened to him.
But Liotta. The way he laughs in this scene, it has to be the best over laughing anyone's done in a movie.
He's obviously actually laughing. Like the way he's like he's crying laughing. It's so
But they must
fucking
have
funny.
filmed like how many takes of this? I don't know how he kept the energy.
I wrote down here, Liotta is just as good as Pesci in this
He
scene.
is.
Yeah.
He's just as good. He's terrified. He's anxious. He's cracking up hilarious. It's a really, really good. It's not just Pesci. Like it's memorable because this is the clip they show at the Oscars when Pesci wins, and it's been quoted so many times. But the weird he almost looks like a horse or something. You know the way he shows his teeth, and he looks so weird.
And then it has a great. You think it's over, and then he does it. You're a funny guy. And it keeps going. Amazing. So Chris, you mentioned Pesci was working as a waiter. Made a compliment to a mobster. Said he was funny. It was not taken well. That became the inspiration. Next one. Sonny complains to Paulie about Tommy.
This is unreal scene.
Which Scorsese did again. He told Sonny to improvise more lines so Sorvino would be a little confused.
Because Sorvino thought it was his scene.
Yeah.
And so he told Sonny, like, go ahead and have fun with it. And so that's why Sorvino looks like a little bit like, what the fuck is going on here?
Confused, yeah.
It leads to the Paul Sorvino face, which is one of the great faces, where it's just completely blank. It's evil, but there's something dumb about it. Like it's not, you're not totally scared, but you should be more, you should be more scared than you are, but there's something soft about his face.
There's my favorite facial expression in this movie is in that scene. Is
when he says,
Paulie turns to Henry and says, you know anything about this fucking restaurant business? And Henry does this like upside down frown, like, I don't know, because of course they've been probably setting this up the whole time where he's like,
right.
I guess I could take over the bamboo lounge,
Right. Yeah, you're right. He probably pocketed that one. I love when he does that. Tommy's a bad kid. He's a bad seed. What am I supposed to do? Shoot him? He's like, yeah, it wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah, Paul, I'm real fucking
and then
sorry.
Sorvino, it says the Sorvino face on him. I also like when people, they capture like an Italian thing that just having been around a lot of Italians in my life, but when somebody's asking for something, but they're also sound like they're insulting, or it's like, I mean, Sean, I just need like 50,000. I mean, what the fuck am I asking for here? Where it's like,
I love that. I love that.
It's just like so many subtle great things. I built in here. Want to give you guys a chance to compare and contrast me and Paulie.
Yeah.
So here are some things. Like Paulie, I only talk to 6 people I work with. I can make my own sauce. I'm anti-divorce, and I don't want to be involved in hard drugs. So those are my 4 things with Paulie.
When Tootie and young Henry are going door to door in the rain with the umbrella to tell Paulie a message, I'm like, this is like me downstairs at Sunset Gower having to come upstairs to talk to Bill about something. I go back downstairs in the rain.
So that's it. If you guys think any more, we can talk about it later. Next one, Copacabana scene. Another one of the famous scenes.
Yeah, like one of the most 2 or 3 famous shots in the movie.
How many exact number of dollars Henry doles out in tips during this scene?
Ooh.
It's 20s, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to go like $500.
No.
600.
140. Only tipped 7 guys.
Sometimes.
Now, he might have done double 20s, but he only tipped 7 people.
I feel like the maitre d' got an extra taste.
What's your favorite little moment in that shot?
Well, I mean, the dumbest moment is for some reason they don't go straight in the kitchen. They go all the way around and end up in the same spot if they had just gone 3 feet straight. I love when they bring the table and it's got the little electric lamp thing on it, and they just hustle this shitty table in. And
my favorite thing is every time you two, don't you work?
I like also the guy eating the hamburger in the hallway. What the fuck is that guy doing?
All the people when they get into the club though, all the people are like, "Hey, I've been waiting for a table." Like, you know, like he's like, "I know you're waiting, to be patient." You know.
But it's the all-time filmmaker flex, right? Because the characters where they end up, they could have just gone in the front door. If you're a VIP, you show up at the front door of a restaurant or a club, they let you right in. It's just to show this entry into this underworld of intrigue and to open Karen's eyes to how powerful.
And when you put
Henry
that
is.
song over it, I mean, people can do flashy shots till the sun comes down. And when you put that song over it and you shoot in the way they do it, and it's their relationship starting. That's what falling in love feels like. You're getting brought into a world. There's like music. There's romance to it, and that's when she basically falls for him. That and of course Bruce.
Do you want to do the De Palma thing here?
What thing?
Oh, from the Untouchables.
Well, they were rivals.
Just him kind of like following up the baby carriage shot.
Yeah, he did he Milton Berled them. De Palma did the Steadicam scene, and Scorsese pulled it out. It was like, watch this, and went for like a minute and a half longer.
Yeah, I'm sure that was a motivation. Their friendly rivalry.
Well, the rivalry ended in 1990
because Scorsese won.
Yeah, because Bonfire of the Vanities came out head to head against Goodfellas, and it was a 4-0 final sweep. And De Palma was never the same.
De Palma's making Snake Eyes.
Yeah, he's done after that.
First of all, Snake Eyes, phenomenal movie. Second of all,
Snake Eyes is pretty good.
Brian De Palma's amazing.
Come on, do De Palma better than Scorsese right now.
No, I'm not. Well,
come on.
I'm not going to do that. But I think we need to. This show should put some respect on Brian De Palma.
I'm not disrespecting.
I'm a giant De Palma fan.
When
I'm
we
just
do
saying
Carlito's Way, and I'm in full Dave Kleinfeld.
I love Dress to Kill.
Yeah.
You know how I feel about Blowout.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
What are we
this
doing Body Double? We did Mission Impossible years ago. That's the only one.
He MJ Drexlered him. He just did
a little bit. It was
never the same.
De Palma never should have done Bonfire of the Vanities. That was a huge mistake on his part.
He should have done this movie. He would have been better off.
Yeah.
Henny Youngman cameo for you, Chris. I asked my wife where she wanted it. My wife said she wanted to go somewhere. I said, try the kitchen.
She wanted to go somewhere she'd never been before. Yeah. Try the kitchen.
Sorry, Meg, with that.
You know, he fucked up. One of the takes of the Steadicam shot, they had to redo it because Henny missed his punchline.
Yeah. Henny was one of a kind.
Yeah.
It was him and Dangerfield, just like we haven't been able to recreate
Henny
either of those.
Youngman in What's Age the Worst?
No, I haven't. What's Age just tremendously.
Well, it's a solid 30 years after he was at the peak of his powers playing himself. So that's tough. That's hard to do.
Scarface, too? I feel like he was.
I don't remember.
Next rewatchable scene. We've done a couple so far. We still have a few to go. The Sweet Lounge, June 11th, 1970, Queens, New York.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible.
I'm just, spoiler alert, this is my favorite scene in the movie.
Bats.
I used to call him Spit Shine Tommy. Relax. Just breaking your balls a little bit. I'm only kidding with you. Now go get your fucking shine box. Wow. Everything. This scene is actually not as long as I felt like it was. And I actually timed it. I thought this was like 10 minutes. It's like 5.
So it features two of my favorite lines that are not the most quoted lines, but Chris mentioned one of them. And of course, Chris, this is why Chris is my brother, is that he used to say this on the basketball court, which is, come on, you feel fucking strong. When Frank Vincent says that, I was like, this is incredible stuff. And also, keep him here.
Yeah.
Keep him here.
Pesci saying keep him here is the all-time, like, this, like, the monster is coming, like, horror movie moment.
Another great, I think he says it, so like, like they're pulling Tommy out and Henry closes the door and he's like, Bats. Tommy's like telling the girl that he's with, he's just like, don't get upset. Don't get upset. It's like, who wouldn't be upset? You two look like you're going to kill each other. Right. And it turns out she had every reason to be upset.
Thoughts on the bartender? We'd like only see him from the neck down.
Yeah.
Not sure what that guy was thinking during all this.
Well, and you would think that there were not too many incidents like that because famously that was the place that was supposed to be clean. You know, Henry was not supposed to, there was not supposed to be any mafia business in that bar and restaurant. So maybe he was more of a civilian type.
And what about Bats gets out of jail and he's only throwing a party and it's just guy with a mustache who looks like he's Sean Penn filming.
I don't get the impression Bats is super popular.
Doesn't seem like it. Well, he
Or
seems
maybe
like a dick.
it's just like, that's just like their pre-gaming. Here's the thing, is I get to the end of that scene every time a man has been kicked to death, basically. And I just always end it by being like, God, maybe I should buy a bar. It just
So you
looks
can
like
murder your enemies?
no, it just looks like an amazing place to hang out. I just want to be able to be like, no, drinks are on. The house.
Chicks around the house.
You got you. You got a little out of order yourself.
No, you insulted him a little bit.
I wrote once that go home and get your fucking shine box is my favorite movie put down. It's just so hard to come back from. It didn't work out for Billy Bats in this case.
Or Tommy.
Or Tommy. I think it led to multiple murders.
So did you guys, do you remember when you kind of first grasped Billy's made, like, I know that there's VO of it, but like in the first like few, however many times I watched this movie, I don't think it really dawns on you.
No, because Liotta says it.
He's like, this stuff
soon.
with Billy is bad. Yeah. But like, I remember still taking it. It's a testament to how fast the movie works and how you have to use basically every part of your senses and like listen to Henry when he talks, because he's going to tell you, this is going to kind of come back on Tommy later.
This is not the first time that Henry has witnessed a murder. It might be the first time he's participated in, like,
he knows this is bad, though.
but he knows it's bad.
Yeah, because
you
of
can
Billy
see
Bats.
in his face. You can see in his face at Tommy's mother's house. You can see in his face when they open the trunk up, the freeze frame on the first shot. You can see that he is upset and scared about the decision that Tommy has made here.
Donovan's Atlantis.
Great choice.
So top 3 best.
When was this song
music
released? March 1969. When is this happening? May 1970. It's genius.
De Niro with the no, you insult him a little bit. Just a little bit. Drinks around the house.
Got a little out of order yourself.
De Niro immediately responding with Pesci's like, I'm sorry I got blood on your floor. And De Niro's like, don't worry, I know a place upstate. And then we had the background of the Vincent, Pesci, and Capri singing group. Capri bailed, and it was Vincent and Pesci. Frank Vincent played Billy Bats, and they had this weird professional partnership. They were in Rewatchable together. They were in this, and things flipped in Casino. Frank Vincent got his revenge.
That's
finally.
right, with an aluminum bat.
Kills him in Pacino. So I think this is separate, but we can combine these because
house?
we go into the mother's house, which is another one of my favorite scenes. This is a classic Italian thing. I had my Aunt Jen, who I loved, who died, I don't know, 10 years ago. But my mom's aunt, so she was my great aunt. And she was always cooking, always in the kitchen. Like, she was just like Scorsese's mom in this movie. And she was the only person in my life that this literally could have happened. I could have stopped by her house at 4 in the morning. I could have had blood on me. I could have had 2 friends, could have knocked, and Aunt Jen would have been like, oh, all right, come on in, I'll make you. And then we would have been eating. Because that's this deep, deep Italian family thing. Yeah. It's like, I have guests, I'm now going to cook for you. And I just I loved everything about this.
So do you think that those are leftovers? Or do you think she's just going from
she
scratch?
fired it up. I think she had sauce in the fridge and meatballs, fired up the pasta fast, got it going.
I read that it was pasta and beans.
Yeah, I didn't see the beans. I was looking for the beans.
Which is not something I've ever really eaten before. I know that seems like a deep Italian thing.
Yeah. Well, it's pasta fagioli is the combo, but beans with pasta is pretty weird Italian.
Between the hoof and the painting, it's the funniest. The movie, it's like this
dog's looking this way, this one's looking the other way.
This guy's like, what do you want from me?
Well, also Pesci and the mom
one's looking east, one's looking west.
They have really good chemistry, though. It actually seems like it's his mom. And then, as Sean said, Liotta's kind of just like, Henry, why aren't you eating? And you could see he's like trying to, get everything. And then you see Jimmy, who's the ketchup, and he's fucking eating.
But I love the way Scorsese talks about it, because it is, I mean, Pesci and De Niro have been working with Scorsese and have known Scorsese for years. And it's like, my son's friends came over and we just made them dinner.
That's one of my favorite things about the making of this movie is not only just the actors, but some of the people working on it, whether they're dating one another, whether they've just been working with Scorsese for a while. It does kind of feel like it is an extension of a friend group in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? It's pretty magical.
It's fun to work with your friends, man. It's more fun than not.
Next one, Spider gets shot, Spider gets killed. I'm combining those, even though there's a scene in the middle when Karen's laying into Henry about going out too much. the Michael Imperioli piece of this, which will be in What Stage the Best as well, but it's just so cool to see him as Spider, knowing that he's eventually going to have this huge Sopranos thing. But when The Sopranos started, it was like, oh my God, it's Spider. And he'd been in some Spike movies, obviously, but this is incredible, Pesci.
My favorite part about this too is that Tommy and Henry start out as Spider, like in the beginning of the movie, and like guys bring them along and really shepherd them, but they're so fucking evil and like kind of, it's like calcified by the time they're older. Like they're not helping.
They're not
Spider.
looking out for the next generation.
Yeah, they're not like, oh, cool, Spider. We'll give him like they're bullying the shit out of Spider.
Yeah.
So one thing that I really like about this scene, we were talking about like you still pick up something new every time you watch it. So this is on HBO Max right now, and before you watch it, there's a 10-minute introduction
from Scorsese.
Yeah. And he talks about how he was really proud that this movie was made by Warner Brothers because Warner Brothers made these classic gangster movies. You know, they made White Heat and they made all these Jimmy Cagney movies. And then they went on to make a lot of the Humphrey Bogart movies, Petrified Forest, and High Sierra, a bunch of those movies. And in this scene with Spider, they make a reference to The Oklahoma Kid, which is the one movie that stars Jimmy Cagney and Humphrey Bogart together, which was also made by Warner Brothers. And like all of these movies are just part of Martin Scorsese's fascination lineage of movies.
What's the best part of that?
When De Niro says Shane.
And the look Pesci gives De Niro when he's just like, what's the question with Humphrey Bogart? And he goes, Shane. And he's like,
yeah, he's like, you clown. How could you make that mistake?
Yeah, they ad-lib most of it. Imperioli has some good stuff about how basically they tried to ad-lib as much of the poker as possible, always getting to the part when he gets mad at Spider. And
what am I, a mirage?
I
thought you said
I was texting you guys about.
I thought you said you were okay, Spider. No, I thought that's what you said. You stuttering prick.
My bones are all shattered.
Don't make a big deal of it.
Yeah, I love it. Don't make a big fucking thing out of this, Spider, you little prick. He shot his foot off. And then leading to, why don't you go fuck yourself, Tommy? And De Niro goes, oh, I don't believe what I just heard.
It's
Tommy,
so
you're
great.
going to live game with that? It's unbelievable.
And he throws the money down
He knows
for
what's going
Spider.
to happen, right? Or is he drunk?
No, I don't think so. This is, I'm saving that for unanswerable questions.
Okay. He shoots him 5 times. And then,
Good shot. What do you want from me?
And then De Niro's mad. He's like, you got to dig the hole. And Pesci's going, who the fuck cares? I'll dig the fucking hole.
He's
They're
like,
starting
no,
to
he
argue
also
about the
says
hole.
he's like, I don't have any lime. You're going to dig the hole.
Fantastic. Sean, you love the aiming the gun scene. I didn't have that in Rewatchables, but I'll let you.
I don't think it's a rewatchable scene, but I think that scene. Let me go back a second. The worm turns on the movie right before the Spider sequence.
Yeah.
It's when Paulie and Henry are together, and Paulie asks him about bats. And he's like, you know that guy.
Christie
that guy.
Street, right? Yeah.
And he's like, no, not that guy, bats. And he identifies it, and then Henry lies. And he's like, he was in the club one night, and then we never saw him. And that's basically the halfway point of the movie.
That might have been when the DVD flipped.
Might have been the moment. And from there on out, it's all lies.
Yeah, he lies to Paulie from there on.
And it's all Tommy's derangement. It's like Tommy killing Spider. This is not killing Bats, who insulted him and who, you know, they had a rivalry. Spider is an innocent. There's no reason for Spider to be killed. And so that from that moment on, everything that happens is this horror movie, really.
Yeah.
The same thing with the Karen sequence with the gun in his face. That's a horror movie. That's terrifying what's happening. Also, Liotta in that scene is amazing, talking her down from shooting him in the face.
Next scene I have is Jimmy's heist reaction. Or I'm sorry, Henry's heist reaction in the shower, where they rip off The Shining with the hand on the thing, which I appreciated.
No prison? No cuts the garlic this thin?
I had him What Stage the Best.
Okay.
We can add it
Prison?
though.
I just wrote prison.
Now take me to jail. One of my favorite lines.
The guy, Johnny Roast Beef, coming in with the pink Cadillac. It's a wedding gift, Jimmy.
I love that car.
Frankie Carbone makes the mistake of buying Mrs. Carbone a mink. That doesn't go very well. And De Niro's dialed up at that point.
Yeah.
What did I tell you? What did I tell you?
He's taking it off of her.
And everybody's kind of watching, and you can see, I like how nobody's like gaping, but they're kind of all having drinks, but kind of doing this whole thing. It's really great. Next one, De Niro sizing up Maury in slow motion, which gets set up with Maury, who I know we're going to get into a little bit, when he's flipping out on Henry, and then Henry kind of settles him down. He's oh, Henry boy. And they go back into the bar, and that's when it goes into the, what was it, Black Sabbath?
No, it's Cream.
Oh, Cream.
Sunshine.
Love, yeah.
When it does the slow motion.
This is when the walls are closing in.
Mm-hmm.
Once that happens, once you hear that song, it's all paranoia for the rest of the way.
You think Chris tells his wife everything?
Are you more of a Jimmy or a Maury, you think?
I mean, I'd like to think of myself as a Jimmy. I know I'm a Maury.
Yeah. Yeah, you are Irish.
It was
You're a Jim Maury.
the game. I'll wait till we get to
because he's a Paulie.
You think he's Paulie?
We know
Who
he's
are
a
you?
Paulie. I'm Henry.
You think you're Henry?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm half Irish and half not Irish.
The Maury murder, which is set up with De Niro, and there's some good overlapping by De Niro in the poker scene. And then he's like, it's off. And you think it's off. And the narration swerves you for being it off. And then they're going to the car. And you're just like, this isn't going to go well.
So
I love when Pesci, after he's dead, when Frankie Carbone's kind of rattled.
I got to wait for the car to warm
he's
up.
like, oh, come on. I got a better shot of letting him drive. So many good throwaway one-liners in this movie.
Carbone and Tommy, I would have loved to have had a buddy movie with just those two, their adventures.
I loved Carbone. All right, the Layla scene, when they found Carbone in the meat truck, he was frozen so stiff. It took him 2 days to thaw him out of the autopsy. You want to get nerdy about the filming, the camera, and the meat truck? I mean, not easy to do the steady cam, lower it down, go through thing.
I mean, you mentioned that when you first saw the movie, you were like, oh, he really went for it. And in almost every sequence, and Chris said this at the beginning, in every sequence, camera's always moving.
Yeah.
The speed of the film changes a lot. Sometimes it's super slow-mo. Sometimes it's just slow-mo. Sometimes the camera moves left and then quickly moves right. Sometimes it follows the character all the way. Sometimes it stops where you don't think it's going to stop. This sequence, though, obviously is like much more classical. It's like pure montage showing the fate of these four characters who we know are going to be killed after we see Stax get his head blown off by Tommy. But it's operatic.
They
fucking Stax fell asleep.
They played Layla on the set so that they could time the camera moves to it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, what do you...
Amazing.
It's like, first of all, like, I guess you just knew you were getting Layla. But second of all, the fact that like all of those moves aren't just like some music supervisor sitting afterwards being like, you know what would be good here is the second half of Layla. It's like he conceives of this whole thing. It's in the script. He writes like a little handwritten note that says Derek and the Dominoes on it. It's just a vision that you can't really match.
I'm older than you guys. Layla was sitting there for a movie for a good 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, but everybody else would have used the guitar riff.
That's what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
Everybody else.
No, but I'm saying the piano part was sitting there at some point for somebody. And of course, it was Scorsese who's like, all right, here we go. Tommy gets whacked. Oh, no. I didn't catch this till probably like the 48th time I watched this movie, but it was Paulie's brother, Tutty.
It's Tutty.
Tutty, yeah.
Tutty. Tutty or Tutty?
Tutty.
What does Tutty stand for?
Theodore?
Leads to the De Niro phone booth reaction. And then Michael Ballhaus, cinematographer, director of photography, said they only shot the scene once.
They also had to...
De Niro was so into it, they couldn't do it again.
Oh, the phone
booth.
Yeah.
The phone booth part.
So the actual execution, my wife pointed this out when we were watching. She had never really watched it all the way through when we watched it together. And she pointed out that when they get out of the car, when they arrive at the house that's where Tommy's going to be made, the camera's so far away and it's shooting the garage and you don't see, nothing is in focus. And you can hear the dialogue between Tommy and the two other guys, but there's something so disorienting and scary about the sort of like uncertainty of what's going to happen. And Tommy's talking a lot. And then obviously he walks into that room and he knows right away what's happening to him. And then they cut back to it later and the guy's like, and that's that. And
it didn't work out.
We had a problem.
Yeah.
And then Jimmy melts down, obviously. And
didn't happen.
An incredible sequence. But again, like it's a very small choice that's made to shoot so far away. But everything is usually in a 2-shot or in a close-up. And that's one that's like 100 yards away.
Sean, do you tell your wife everything?
Only about Goodfellas.
Last one is the Dior dresses. Right down there. No, keep going.
So you don't have any of the helicopters. You don't have any of jumping in the fire.
I wrote the 40-minute
I had 11 scenes. I don't. At some point,
I think you missed 2.
All right, let's hear it.
I also wrote down. Well, I have the coke haze. I'll let Chris talk about that. But just because
of the mustache.
I wrote Karen is assaulted by Bruce and Henry gets his revenge.
That should have been in there. I had that in What's Age the Best.
What do you want, fucko? You want some? That's obviously
fucko.
That's very memorable. And then I think the wives scene where the camera's spinning around and showing all the wives, and Karen is narrating and she's talking about these women and how ugly they are and how bad their makeup is, and that's another portrait of that world that you don't always see. You don't always know those women. You don't always see those women in these movies, and it's really well done.
I got upset. I felt like it was a tough beat for Italian women, that scene.
Well, in that life, in that time.
I think it was inaccurate. I think in the book, they talk about it was even a little, they could have gone a little further with missing teeth and stuff like that.
The thing about the coke sequence is that it actually just replicates the sensation of that feeling, I think, and I think it's down to everything from the fact that I believe it starts at 6:50 a.m. He's already high out of his mind looking at helicopters, to him having to step down on the parking brake to avoid getting into the car accident because he's so distracted and the tension he feels, and going to the hospital to pick up his brother, and Isaiah Whitlock's there, and he's like, "You look like shit," basically. But my favorite part about all of that, aside from obviously it's just such a kinetic scene, is, the first 25 times you watch it, you maybe don't even think about it, but the amount of different songs that are used in basically recurring ways, and it basically sounds like somebody manically spinning a radio dial, which is like, you almost imagine that's what he's doing in his car, is turning the radio dial. So it goes Harry Nilsson, The Who, was it Memo from Turner's not in that scene. It's like The Who, Harry
Nilsson. It's part of that sequence. It's Rolling Stones.
Yeah,
There's two different Stones songs.
It's just, he's the best director ever for my money at making you feel what a character is feeling by doing stuff with cameras and sound.
So what's your most rewatchable scene? Mine is June 11th, 1970.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that. I'll agree with you on that.
Leading into the mom's house.
So Billy Bats
leading into the mom's house. That's my favorite part of the movie. But I love this entire movie, and I have no favorite part. But if you made me pick at gunpoint.
You didn't put anything from Young Henry in here.
It's good.
I'm just saying you didn't.
It's much more montagey.
Yeah.
Most scenes last no longer than a minute. But I love every scene that Sorvino is in. Every single scene that he's in is incredible, including during the coke haze, the last conversation that he has with
the
Sorvino.
$3,200.
Yeah, that is just unbelievable stuff. And then
I have to turn my back on you now.
Yeah.
That's either right before or right after Henry and Karen, and Karen tells Henry that she dumped the coke after he gets out of prison.
Why did you do that?
And he's screaming and losing his mind, and then they collapse together in the corner of the room.
Yeah.
So fucking heartbreaking. Unbelievable sequence. I mean, what do you mean I'm funny? I think is the most rewatchable.
Bamboo Lounge versus the Sweet Lounge. One of the lounges.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's Age the Best? Mentioned some of the stuff already, like the opening line, everybody in the club. The kid who plays young Henry's good.
He's great.
That could have gone badly. The freeze frame gimmick, which was pretty out there, and now is like perfect. And every freeze frame is the perfect time to have a freeze frame to talk about. And Scorsese said he wanted it to mark like a specific point of something where something's about to change.
He stole that from Truffaut. Yeah.
I was just going to say it's all French New Wave. Yeah.
It's good. Tommy asking Henry to go on the double date as they're blowing up the club. Mentioned that. The Sopranos connection. So we have Paulie Walnuts in the beginning. Younger Paulie Walnuts has a couple scenes. You have Christopher. You have Dr. Melfi. You have 27 actors in all.
I love when Paulie Walnuts calls the mailman a scumbag.
Into the fucking oven you go.
Chase said, David Chase said, Goodfellas is a very important movie to me. Goodfellas really plowed that. Found that movie very funny and brutal and very real. I always think about Goodfellas when they go to their mother's house that night when they're eating, and she brings out her painting. That stuff is great. The Sopranos learned a lot from that. You can feel it. The narration is another What's Age the Best. Yeah, as listeners know, I'm anti-narration in most cases. Sometimes it does work. This was one of those times. Jimmy was the kind of guy who rooted for the bad guys in the movies. Like just 40 gems. Digging out Billy Batts' corpse still kills me, but the What's Age the Best part is vague memory of the trailer. This was actually in the trailer. Like, oh, what's that? An arm, a leg? And just being like, oh my God, when does this movie
A
come
wing.
out? Yeah. Another would say the best. Alec Baldwin's De Niro impression, because it's basically modeled after this that he crushed on SNL, which it's available. You got to go look on YouTube for the Joe Pesci show with Jim Brewer is Pesci. And then De Niro is played by Baldwin, obviously. And then I think they have Lethal Weapon. They have Mel Gibson and Danny Glover on, and De Niro beats the shit out of them. It's really funny. It's really good. Everyone in Henry's wedding being named Paulie Peter Marie.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Paulie Jr.
The scene when he, I should have put this in Rewatchable, but when Henry crosses the street to fuck up the preppy guy.
Yeah.
What do you want, fucko? You want some? And the guy, and then the guy just stands there and gets
his
killed.
face makes.
Yeah.
And Ball said that's like the most violent thing he's ever, like, they couldn't really do that much.
It's like a real kind of nerdy film thing though too. That's like one of the only sequences in the film that's like bright green.
Mhm.
It's like, this is the suburbs. It's supposed to be safe. Most of the movie is red, blue, and black. That scene is green. It's supposed to be like
underrated is when Henry first meets Bruce at the club and he gives him the wet fish handshake.
Right.
You know that guy?
Yeah, that fucking guy. I have for what's age the best, the bad wigs to characters ratio. There's
purposeful or unpurposeful? Because Maury's purposeful.
Maury's purposeful. Frankie Carbone, I can't imagine that's his hair. Pesci.
It's not Pesci's hair.
Yeah, I don't think it's
Pesci's wig at one point, you can see it coming out of the back. You go on down the line, there's just some classic wigs. The soundtrack we mentioned, Roses Are Red, Give Me Shelter, which Scorsese would then use another 20 times. My Way, Sid Vicious. More would say the best, the food. This movie makes me hungry, which is weird because people are being slaughtered every 10 minutes. But the prison scene, them making everything, and Paulie slicing the onions with a razor blade and all that. I mean, the garlic.
So that it emulsifies in the oil, yeah.
And then even at the end when he's making the Coke meat sauce for his handicapped brother and he's just too quickly doing the meatballs, it just kind of makes me want to have Italian food.
Every kind of food. Even when Henry goes to meet Jimmy and he realizes that Jimmy's going to have him killed and then he orders an English muffin, I'm like, I got to get into a diner pretty soon.
CR, you're the king of English muffins. We know this about you, buddy.
Another part. So Henry gets out of jail. He's been in jail for like 6-7 years. His family's life has fallen apart. He hasn't seen his kids in the outside world in like 7 years. Comes in for 2 seconds.
Daddy, you want to see my drawing?
Who wants to go to Uncle Paulie's? And they're like, me! It's like, who wants to go to your scary uncle? It's over like maybe going to a diner and getting a burger.
Those kids have already been traumatized by that visit to prison.
Oh my God.
But the skinhead getting a blowjob in prison.
Right. Yeah, those kids did not turn out well. You mentioned the genius in the last 20 minutes of how crazy it is. Scorsese said he wanted the film to infuriate people. I wanted to seduce everybody into the movie in the style, and then I wanted to take them apart. And then the last one staged the best. This is from a 2009 mailbag I wrote. Question from Ryan G. after Game 4 of the 2009 World Series.
What a moment for Ryan G. coming back around here.
Not sure if you remember the 2009 World Series, CR.
Uh-huh.
He said it was a new level of losing for Philly fans. The made man. Remember in Goodfellas when Pesci thinks he's about to become a made man only to walk into an empty room and get shot in the back of the head? After Pedro Felice's home run, Philly fans went from having that momentum to having their season lying in the ground like Pesci in a bloody mess.
Mm-hmm.
I had that what's age the best, just Chris's reaction as I read that.
Just to see my face?
Yeah.
You got your revenge though.
Uh-huh.
You got your World Series.
You did. You got it.
Yeah.
I said my response was the best made man sports movie or sports real life moment ever was Ernest Biner. Because he's running into the end zone with the winning touchdown. And it's like, oh no. He's done. Any other what's age the best for you guys?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Not showing the Lufthansa heist. Which is an ingenious budget save because when you hear Henry describe it, there would be no way to shoot it without it being like this huge set piece because there's so many guys involved. There's so many little things involved. But
also, we'd have to see these guys who are like these goofy characters actually pull off something.
Yeah, I mean, it's
real.
When Henry and Tommy do Air France and it's just the key, it's fine. But like this seems like a pretty elaborate heist. Obviously, it was the biggest heist in American history for a while. I just remember I remember thinking like when he's in the shower and 1010 Wins comes on and it announces it, and I'm just like, they're going to show it in flashback or something, right? Like I have to see the heist. It's got to be here. But you realize they probably saved like $5 million or whatever it was from not making that. So many like ingenious choices like that, because in reality, it's not really the heist that matters. It's everything that happens after the heist.
There are not a lot of scenes that happen in the movie that don't have anything to do with Henry, or Karen. They're really the people that we are following most closely. And Henry really doesn't have anything to do with the heist. He's the connector. You know, he's the guy who syncs Maury together with Jimmy. But it's us staying with Henry, which is also just a really good way to stay inside of Henry's story.
I would also say what's aged the best is Karen and Henry's fights, which are like, I don't know if they're like, depending on your relationship, you might not say like they're realistic or whatever, but that's how people.
How many times have you woken up with a gun in your face?
This week? No, but I think that the guttural way that she screams at him after she's like lying on the ground and he takes off when he gets her off of him with the gun and she's like, I'm sorry. Like, and then them in the corner, like you pointed out, like that's that kind of intimacy that they don't like necessarily talk about it in the movie. It's just shown to you. You know, you just see that these people are alone on an island together.
It's also very believable that she's just through everything is just so hot for this guy. Yeah. I mean, they're hot for each other. Like they still have this, even in that crazy 1980 moment where she's basically his partner at this point, they're connected, you know, in a way that doesn't seem to be the case for a lot of other people with their partners in the movie.
Any what's aged the best for you?
I just think you can't overestimate the music thing.
Yeah.
Like it really is, it's like a snapshot of American popular music for 25 years.
Yeah.
And blended together seamlessly. And the only time when there's really no music whatsoever in the movie is at the end when he's got a gun to his head when he's going to be arrested. I mean, otherwise it's just cacophonous the whole time.
It's my favorite soundtrack.
43 songs, apparently.
Yeah.
What's aged the worst? Mentioned the original Goodfellas DVD. Just 2021, Michael Imperioli. I think Sopranos trumps Spider, but I love Spider so much that it's just weird to have those two distinct characters kind of living in separate universes where the characters overlap.
You know, like the collapsing of worlds there.
Yeah, it's just that there's a crossing the beams element that's confusing. Henry's Gumar, just not a looker. I just wish they had upgraded Janice a little bit. Just like 20%.
I mean, have you ever seen what Henry and Karen really look like?
Yeah,
they don't look like Ray Liotta and Lorraine Bracco.
Yeah.
I like my Gumars maybe to bring something to the table. The names of
Bill's
several
Gumars would be a
good pod.
Yeah. That's right after Michael Mann's first dates.
The names of several real life gangsters were altered for the movie. So Tommy was really Tommy Two Gun DeSimone.
Yeah.
Paulie was Paul Vario, and Jimmy was Jimmy the Gent Burke. Henry Hill said Pesci was accurate, except Tommy was massively built.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? Like
just
downstairs?
Like big, no, big guy. There were two movies about the heist, which I didn't know about.
I read this last night.
Yeah.
There was one in 91,
One was called
right?
$10 Million Getaway in 1991, playing Jimmy, John Maloney.
No way.
Yeah. Wendell Pierce was Stax. And weirdly, Mike Starr played Frenchie. He just ran it back.
Doubled up.
Yeah. Double paychecked it. Apparently not good. And then in 2001, The Big Heist, Donald Sutherland was Jimmy. That one came and went. So there you go on that. Another would say the worst, BC basketball post 1980, because Henry Hill kind of murdered it.
Yeah.
We were never the same. That was my favorite team growing up, that and Holy Cross.
So that was they really threw that game, right? That was
they
a real
threw a bunch
punch
of games. Yeah, it was a big Sports Illustrated thing. Catch up on pasta. Just please, out there, what's age the worst? This hurts. Boogie Nights is kind of ripped off the Janice apartment scene a tiny bit, I feel like.
Along with many other things.
Yeah, I know. But that one specifically, when Dirk brings everybody, it's like, it's my dojo. And it's just very on the Janice apartment corner. And it kind of bugs me every time I watch Janice's apartment.
I mean, think about the shape and structure of Boogie Nights. It's the same thing. It's like this world through one guy's eyes, who's a regular kind of a guy.
But is an outsider.
But yes, as an outsider, it's mostly
There's room for both.
It's montage, dolly zooms all over the place, slow-mo, incredible soundtrack.
Though.
Yeah. I mean, there's like incredible oneers going into the club, which is just like going into the Copacabana. I mean, there's so many things that are similar. Don't get me wrong.
Nice.
Boogie Nights is one of my favorite films of all time, but it is an overt homage to Goodfellas.
It is. The Janice, definitely. She even like says one designer's name a little wrong.
Right.
Like Dirk does.
Right. The what is the name of the furniture?
Is that the couch she has?
Yeah, she talks about the couch
She
and she
says the wrong
mispronounces
name.
it.
All right, movie nerd section.
1 second. I have one other thing that's aged the worst.
Yeah.
Trafficking cocaine on commercial airlines. Not as easy as it was then, I don't think.
So much harder.
She just like has a bunch of kilos in her baby bag.
Yeah, with the lucky hat.
And she's just like, I got to go from Pittsburgh to...
Was it actually that easy?
I think it was.
I don't think they checked your bags. I mean, I honestly don't really remember a whole lot of like security before 9/11. I guess I'm pretty age-wise, I wouldn't remember, but...
How much weight did you move in the 80s?
I'll tell you this, I dated a girl who moved to Chicago, and there was like at least 2 times where last second went to go see her, and just I felt like I could have brought anything on the plane and it would have been fine. Bought the ticket last minute, brought the suitcase, just threw it up over the thing, and it could have had anything in it. It was so easy. It was kind of alarming. All right, Sean, movie nerd section. Chris, you can chime in. You can come in like De Niro stomping on Billy Bats. It's just 5 things we got to hit quick.
Stomping on Cahiers du Cinema.
Michael Ballhaus.
Michael Ballhaus, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to just do like 30 seconds on Mike?
Sure. He shot this movie. He's the cinematographer on the film. He's a German guy. He's an unlikely collaborator with Martin Scorsese. This is not the first movie they made together. I think it was the 3rd movie they made together. And he got his start with Rainer Werner Fassbinder. I know we'll be doing a lot of Fassbinder films in the future here on the Rewatchables.
Guy, yeah.
But, he shot some of the most well-known classics of world cinema, World on a Wire, Bitter Tears of Petra von Kant, some great movies. Comes over to the States in 82, makes a little movie with Joe Pesci called Dear Mr. Wonderful.
Ah.
So not the first time he worked with him. And then he works on a movie called Baby It's You, which is produced by Griffin Dunn and Amy Robinson.
I saw that movie.
It's a John Sayles movie. Really good movie. Griffin Dunn and Amy Robinson are getting ready to make After Hours with Scorsese. And they're like, I've got this great cinematographer, this German guy, Michael Bauhaus. And also, he's related to Max Ophuls, another great filmmaker who Scorsese really admires, who PTA really admires, who was very famous for moving the camera a lot. Bauhaus and Scorsese are match made in heaven. They worked together, I think, on 7 more films over the next 15 years. And he famously worked really fast and could accomplish the things that Scorsese wanted to do quickly, which of course is really important when you're making a movie that has tons of camera movements. So he's a key collaborator over the next 15 years with them.
Coming up next on First Take, Ballhaus or Gordon Willis? Chris Ryan's going to weigh in next.
Should I do a quick shout out to Thelma Schoonmaker? Scorsese's longtime editor, and she, I think, is like the secret MVP of this movie in some ways, or at least the cutting is the secret MVP of this movie. And she was married to a famous world filmmaker named Michael Powell, who passed away while they were doing post-production on Goodfellas, and Scorsese like organized like everything for her to go back to England and do the funeral for him and everything. And she came back and finished it. And yeah, this is one of the most uniquely and brilliantly edited movies ever made.
So many ideas, so much rhythm in the editing too.
Opening graphics.
So they're created by Saul and Elaine Bass. Saul Bass, probably the most famous title sequence creator and maybe the most famous graphic designer in movie history. Really well known for designing the title sequences for Alfred Hitchcock, Otto Preminger, a bunch of people in the 60s. He, along with Hitchcock, essentially sketched out the Psycho shower sequence. He was a filmmaker himself. He made some movies. He kind of fell into a little bit of like irrelevance for 15 or 20 years there. And then James L. Brooks in 1987 called him up and said, I want you to do the titles for a little movie called Broadcast News. And Saul Bass is back. And what he does is he basically like boils the movie down to its purest idea and communicates it just in the title sequences. Yeah. And in this movie, it's just those fast moving titles.
It's just momentum. It's like this movie just has an engine, and when it turns on, it just never turns off.
Freeze frame, The Legacy.
I mean, you mentioned it.
But going backwards to the 50s, 60s.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's French filmmakers, Godard and Truffaut especially, who did the thing that you identified, which is they would basically freeze the camera, freeze the film on a moment when you wanted to think about what the character was thinking about, or what was going to come next, or why this is like a move that some filmmakers make. It was like a commentary. And
Should Corey do this with the Rewatchables video that
Right
goes
now.
on YouTube?
right on CR's face.
Right.
What's he thinking about? There's a lot of famous ones in this one. The most famous one is the first shot, right, where you see Henry Hill's face and then it freezes and then you see the titles. But the one that I always think about is when Henry and
I think the dad is my favorite one of all.
Oh, that's a good one.
God,
He's
I
him
love
like
that.
that. Yeah.
He got the belt
Yeah.
in midair.
There's when he's beating him. There's when the postman's head almost goes into the oven. But the one that I always think about is when Jimmy and Henry are walking and they're talking about killing Maury. And Jimmy starts, they do hear the voiceover and that's when
I knew he was going to have Maury wax.
Yes.
Yeah. Cocaine helicopter camera stuff. We covered that, but had anybody done stuff like that before?
They had, had anybody made a sequence like that before?
I'm just like basically simulating what it was like to be on cocaine.
I think there was more like psychedelics
sequence.
were like more like the flavor. Like people
Yeah.
would try to replicate what it was like to be on a trip. Like Apocalypse Now, I think very famously tries to like do a lot of that kind of psychedelia. I don't think anyone had ever, there were cokey movies before that, obviously, but I don't think anything had been like, this is what happens when a person has gotten to the end of the rope of cocaine addiction and there's like no real high left. There's just paranoia. I also think that's fascinating because I think they did some preview of it. They did some like focus group work with it and people were writing, like literally were writing "fuck you" on the comment cards.
Out.
And I think if I remember correctly, like then like we're like, fuck it, let's make it even faster and more agitating and more like alarming. So I always love that. It's a punk rock move.
We covered Scorsese in the 80s and we covered the different colors thing. So we're moving to casting what ifs. De Niro was offered Jimmy or Tommy, chose Jimmy. Once he agreed, they secured the money because De Niro was a bigger star than ever from Untouchables and Midnight Run, and they were able to do it. Did you see the second choice for Jimmy was? It's your guy.
Yeah, it's Malkovich.
No. In my research, it was William Peterson.
Oh, I got Malkovich. Malkovich like literally is like, I was going through like a midlife crisis and I wound up doing Aragon instead of Goodfellas.
Oh, there's some William Peterson buzz. Can't imagine William Peterson as Jimmy.
I don't think that would work.
Yeah.
Is William Peterson Irish?
I don't know.
The Malkovich thing is in the GQ oral history.
Okay.
The director cast Liotta after De Niro saw him in Something Wild. Scorsese loved him. Liotta turns down Harvey Dent in Batman, which becomes the biggest movie in 1989 to film this, apparently.
Who played Harvey Dent in Batman?
I don't know. Wasn't a huge part. Liotta said Sean Penn was also considered for Henry Hill.
Did he?
He did.
Man, so that's essentially what Sean Penn does in State of Grace, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy with Liotta. The Sean Penn in the Henry Hill role is pretty fascinating. That's catching Sean Penn at a really nice point in his career
Jesus
too.
Christ.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
I think that Henry has to be the center of gravity in the movie. And Penn, I think, works best when he's on fire. I think when he's the craziest guy in the room is when he's at his best.
Penn, 10 years later, probably could have done a really good Jimmy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Not as good as De Niro.
Definitely.
Paul Sorvino decided he wanted to drop out as Paulie because he didn't think he was cold enough, went back and forth with the agent. And that night he looked in the mirror because he was brushing his teeth or something and was frightened by the look on his face and decided that should be Paulie's character and the rest was history. There's weird stuff about Tom Cruise and Madonna in this movie. I don't know what is urban legend or not, but
I think that that Tom Cruise stuff is
something
is documented.
Yeah.
But it sounds like that was also like you had to offer your movie to Tom Cruise. Just like you had to like basically go through the process of, hey, if Tom wants to do this, great. It
does seem like he kicked the tires on Madonna a little bit because there was stuff about he scouted her at Speed the Plow, which was on Broadway at that point for the Lorraine Bracco thing. Madonna in this movie would have been a mistake.
Would not have worked. Yeah. Too distracting. Too beautiful.
Too distracting.
Tom Cruise and Madonna, we're not talking about this movie.
Madonna could have played the Gumar. Scorsese.
Well, it's funny though because Tom Cruise does make a movie that is in many ways very similar to this movie a few years later, The Firm.
Yeah,
which is also about a young guy entering an organization, rising up through the ranks. He learns what it's really like to be a part of these organizations. It's not that dissimilar.
Also led to Chris having all his money in the Cayman Islands. And then we mentioned My Way. All right, now we're getting to the good stuff. Best That Guy, aka the Joey Pants Award. My God. Disclaimer, Frank Vincent not eligible.
Okay.
He's Frank Vincent.
I honestly never know like where you're going with this. There was somebody in the last pod where you were like, this guy, you're like, Charlie Korsmo is Charlie Korsmo. I was like, no, literally, no one has ever heard that name out loud.
Our nominees: Mike Starr as Frenchie, Frank Severo as Frankie Carbone, Tony Darrow as Sonny, Chuck Lowe as Maury, and Welker White as Lois Bird.
I have a couple more nominees. Or are we closing the nominations?
You can add a couple JVs.
For Joey Pants, Peter Onorati as the Florida bookie that they almost feed to a lion. And Tobin Bell, speaking of The Firm, the assassin from The Firm is Jimmy's parole officer.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I vote for Mike Starr because I never can remember his name and he's in everything. And I don't think people know he's Mike Starr.
Is Kevin Corrigan?
The thing is, he's so young in this movie. I don't think it's like, oh, that guy, because he's like young Kevin Corrigan. So I don't know if he qualifies.
Me and Sean
Kevin
are like
Corrigan's
Kevin Corrigan's like a movie star.
Yeah, I'm like, it's him and De Niro and then a whole bunch of other guys.
If Kevin Corrigan asked Craig for a cigarette, I don't think he'd
Would you know who that is?
I would. I recognized him, yeah.
You did, okay. What about Frank DeLeo? Tootie. I mean, interesting story.
What else has he done?
Oh, he was the bad guy in the Michael Jackson video that Martin Scorsese directed. Was it bad?
Yeah,
it was bad.
Bad.
So Scorsese directs. You know this whole story? This is a great story. Michael Jackson's going to make a video for Bad. There has to be like an arch villain.
This is like the black and white one, right? Yeah.
I think it's just in the sewers, right? Isn't it just like in the subway rather? And he needs to cast a villain. So who does he cast? Michael Jackson casts his own manager, who's Frank DeLeo. And then Scorsese likes him so much that he casts him to be in Goodfellas. And then Frank DeLeo goes on to be like kind of a character actor while also being the manager of Michael Jackson in the 80s, which, as you can imagine, is a very lucrative job. And he's pretty good as Tootie. I feel like Tootie is a huge part of the movie.
Good. Here's my case for Mike Starr. The Bodyguard.
Okay.
Huge part in that. Never knew what his real name was. Eats the peppers in Dumb and Dumber and is murdered by Jim Carrey. And
he's one of the hitmen.
He's in 100 other movies. He's just one of those guys.
I like Mike Starr.
It's got to be Mike Starr.
I just like Onorati because you can barely tell it's him because he gets his face caved in and almost gets fed to a lion.
What about Isaiah Whitlock Jr.? Is he? No,
that's a good one.
Isaiah Whitlock Jr.
But he's Clay Davis now, right?
Yeah, I feel like he's
okay. All right.
Yeah.
He doesn't say she in this movie.
Vincent Hanna, Give Me All You Got award for overacting. So Ray Liotta over laughing in the funny guy scene, I don't think is eligible. This has to be Maury, right?
It's either Maury or when Liotta finds out that the Coke's been flushed. That was everything we had, Karen! $60,000! Why did you do that?
That's pretty good. That's better.
Whenever my wife like accidentally puts like too much cumin in a sauce, I go, why did you do that? That was everything. That was all the cumin we had. Karen, they were never gonna find it.
That's good.
They were definitely going to find it. It always makes me so mad that he gets mad at Karen. It's like, you put the Coke in the fucking kitchen cupboard. Right. What cop is like, that's too far to reach. I guess you guys don't have any blow
no, that's
here.
Just sugar. Don't
They've
look at that.
had a fucking like net over this family for a year. And he's like, they never would have found the cocaine in our TV cabinet.
It
drives me nuts.
That's on the Mount Rushmore of Chris impressions. Karen!
Dion Waiters
That's
award.
Bill every time Marcus Smart shoots with 22 seconds left. Marcus!
Oh my God, don't get me started. Dion Waiters award. Paul Sorvino as Paulie. Michael Imperioli as Spider. Chuck Lowe as Maury. Frank Vincent as Billy Batts. Debbie Mazar as Sandy. Tony Darrow as Sonny. And there's a whole JV too.
I would almost change this award's name to the Frank Vincent Award for Bats.
The Dion Waite / Billy Batts Award?
This is the Billy Batts. It's like one scene and you'll never forget him.
I think coming in third place is Debbie Mazar as Sandy.
I like when she trips when she first sees him. It's really good.
That's really good. They're like locked eyes.
Yeah.
That's really good. I guess, who's in second place?
I think it's Chuck Lowe.
Did Chuck Lowe? Yeah.
Chuck Lowe also Robert De Niro's landlord.
Chuck Lowe comes in hot and he stays hot.
He does.
In real life.
He does. Yeah. Okay. And then I mean Frank Vincent is Frank Vincent. This is Billy Batts is iconic level.
It has to be Frank Vincent. Paul Sorvino, I think, is in the movie slightly too much.
I agree.
Yeah.
Imperioli doesn't come in hot. He's
I don't know
amazing
that
in
you
those
would give
two
him.
scenes.
You wouldn't give him Dion unless he also was Christopher. You know what I mean? It's like it's almost the thrill of seeing him at such a young age in such a like a small role.
I think what's great about Billy Batts is this guy is basically in the movie for 4 minutes, comes in and immediately matches the energy of these two guys who are having like the best movie performances basically of their lives, at least in Pesci's case. And he just matches it for 4 minutes and then leaves.
Come on, you feel fucking strong?
Recasting couch. Obviously, I'm recasting Janice the Gumar.
This poor woman.
I got one for you for this.
I have Annabelle Sciorra.
I have Fiorentino.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah, coming off After Hours.
Oh,
Sold.
that's really good. That's better than mine. Half-assed internet research. Scorsese read the book. Got fired up.
I think that's reasonable to assume.
Got fired up. Cold called the writer. Told Pileggi, I've been waiting for this book my entire life. And Pileggi allegedly replied, I've been waiting for this phone call my entire life. The rest was history. We talked about the ad-libbing. Henry Hill paid $480,000. The pistol whip scene in that oral history. Mark Evans Jacob, who played the quivering boy next door. He said, Ray was boiling with rage. He stayed away from me across the street, kept that going for take after take. We tried to keep the anger controlled, but one take got a little too close and I got hit. I always like when that happens.
When you destroyed Skip Bayless on Twitter like 8 years ago, you're like, why do we have to do this? Was your wife like, I'm more attracted to you than ever? I'll hide this tweet for you on your behalf.
No, my wife was like, when you got suspended, we're still getting paid though, right? I was like, yeah, we're fine. I'm still getting paid. So Scorsese started dating Ileana Douglas during this movie, and Lorraine Bracco was married to Harvey Keitel at the time.
Scorsese, wasn't he also with Barbara DeFina?
Yeah,
He was.
There's some overlap. He might have.
It sounds like he was having.
Yeah, it sounds like he was having a good time.
Two at the same time.
Michael Imperioli broke a glass in his hand, had to be rushed to the emergency room. During one of those scenes, doctors thought it was a gunshot wound. To try to treat it, then they made him wait for 3 hours. And then Martin Scorsese apparently told Imperioli, someday you'll be telling this story in the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. And then it happened. In March 2000, he told the whole story with the capper being Scorsese told me I was going to tell this story. The painting was based on a picture from the November 1978 National Geographic. Only 5 actors ever won an Academy Award for portraying real-life killers.
Charlize Theron in Monster.
Okay.
Hannibal Lecter. Oh, no. Hannibal Lecter's not real. Real-life killers.
Yeah.
Ooh, this is
Forrest Whitaker.
And Idi Amin.
in The Last King of Scotland. Okay.
Estelle Parsons and Susan Hayward and Joe Pesci. Those are the 5.
I never would have gotten those.
Just found that. That's, again, half-assed internet research. Scorsese did the great train robbery at the end with the Pesci shooting the camera. Explained it 90 years later. Same story. Gunshots will always be there. He's always going to be looking behind his back. So he's got eyes behind his back. They're going to get him. The music editor, Christopher Brooks, said Scorsese had thought about all the songs that when they would appear 3 years before he shot the film.
He wrote it and it's in the Pileggi script. He's like, they would basically go, they would do improv workshops with the actors. They would take the dialogue that they got out of that. They would do the script. And in the process of these drafts, he would just see Scorsese's draft had like, The Crystals, this song, or Darling Love, or Layla, or whatever. And he's picking like fucking songs of like Memo from Turner. It's like he's just got like this Rolodex of American pop music.
They changed the rule in 2000 that you couldn't be made unless you were full Italian descent.
They changed it.
The 5 families changed
like
it.
David Stern made a illegal defense.
They said a man could be made in 2000 if the father was of Italian descent and his last name was Italian, you were good to go. So
you're not good to go.
Not good to go because my mom's side was the Italian side. Scorsese had to remove 10 frames of blood to ensure the R rating. There was an X rating thing going on with this movie in 1990 about it was so violent it was going to get an X rating. Chris, how many fucks or derivatives of the word fuck are in this movie?
Like 300.
I'll say 175.
321.
Whoa, good guess. My favorite my favorite.
Fucko?
No. And I'm going to start sending this to you guys late at night when something bad happens to the Knicks, is you motherfucking mutt. when Bats starts insulting him and Pesci loses his mind. That's my favorite one.
When like Kevin Herter is lighting up the Knicks in round one. You motherfucking mutt, Kevin Herter.
Pesci's maybe one of the best cursing, like
he really is.
profanity guys. Like just like when they're doing the Bamboo Lounge and Liotta's like, you need help reaching anything? And Pesci's just like, you look like you're decorating a Christmas tree, you fucking prick.
I'm really excited for Apex Mountain.
Oh boy.
Scorsese.
I believe so.
I also believe it is.
Can I give one reason why I think so?
Yeah.
Scorsese's only taken 4 screenwriting credits in his whole career. 2 of them come at the very beginning. I think Who's That Knocking on My Doors, at My Doors, first movie, and then Mean Streets. And they're co-written. And he hasn't made a gangster movie in 17 years. And he'd sworn them off, basically.
Yeah.
And this was like, you know what? I have to go back. I have to go back to my past. I have to go back to this world. I have to go back to this community of people that I understand so deeply. And I'm going to write it with the guy who's a journalist. And what makes the movie so special is that it feels real. And it also feels like the craziest movie, operatic movie you've ever seen. And it's blending those 2 styles specifically from his point of view. So I say Scorsese.
I
agree.
The only, like, for the sake of argument, I would make for Departed in 06 is that there haven't been any real hiccups since then. Like, in terms of his perception within the larger, like, you know, pop culture. It's like from 06 to now, he's like this emeritus, greatest living American filmmaker. Pretty much whatever he wants to get made, he can get made. He pushes the envelope with Irishman. He gets this huge budget to make Killers of the Flower Moon from Apple. Like, he can do it. He's gotten television shows made. He gets to make 2 documentaries every 18 months. Like, you could say that, like, all of the
from
stress,
a juice standpoint,
juice-wise,
06, he
like,
had
I
more.
think from 06 to now, we're in the kind of like this incredible twilight. But
I would have said
I would
King
say,
of New York, if you're going to go juice standpoint, turn of the 20th century into the 21st century, it felt like he had it then. Like,
so,
where he could be like, I'm going to make a movie with Daniel Day-Lewis and Leo
right,
DiCaprio.
like Gangs of New York. Yeah.
Gangs of New York,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that for juice, and I think this for talent.
This is artistically, I think this is...
I would just, the counterpoint to that is, as I said, he was not a huge box office drop previous to this movie. This movie did well, not amazing, but well, but it also lays the groundwork for 5 years later. You get Casino, which is his first true blue hit movie, $100 million movie, and is also an amazing movie. I hope we do it someday on this show. And that basically, the Goodfellas to Casino lineage allows for everything else you're talking about. It wouldn't. It just would not happen without those movies.
It's just like you look at, so 06 Departed, Shine a Light, big deal, Rolling Stones documentary, Shutter Island, did pretty well, right?
Did well, yeah.
Boardwalk Empire, 6-7 years on HBO. More docs, George Harrison, Public Speaking, Hugo, whatever. But then Wolf of Wall Street, Silence, Oscar nominations at least, Irishman. I don't know. It's an argument, but I think this is it.
How about gangster movies? Because I feel like Goodfather is an American
I think this
movie.
actually ends them. I don't really know how you. I know Sopranos comes after this, but this is the capstone.
Yeah, we have to move to TV after this, basically.
That's a very interesting idea that it's almost like the end.
Yeah.
I think The Godfather is like the superior film, but it's also like I'll never be able
It's
to
an American movie.
I'll never be able to experience The Godfather in its time. Whereas Goodfellas, like I said, like when I was growing up, Goodfellas was like in my ear all day long.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been living with it my whole life.
The Scorsese De Palma rivalry. I feel like this was Apex Mountain, like November 1990.
You know,
and then it was a 10-8 first round and then a knockout in the second round.
The truth is that there is no. I don't think there is a Scorsese without De Palma for one simple fact: is that De Palma discovered Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
And where is Martin Scorsese without Robert De Niro?
Copacabana. Would you go Barry Manilow's song or Copacabana in this movie?
That's a real litmus test of you as a person. If I say Copacabana, do you think Goodfellas or Barry Manilow?
It's Goodfellas.
It's
for me.
Goodfellas.
It's Goodfellas for me. Barry Manilow, that was an amazingly popular song when I was a kid. I mean, it was on for
You a
4
Manilow
months.
guy?
No, I like that song though.
Okay.
Lola, she's a dancer. Um, movie gangster names.
This is why he'll never be a made man, Bill.
Yeah. Movie gangster names, unquestionably the apex. De Niro. This is Midnight Run, the first, and then Goodfellas, where they can't get the funding until he agrees to be in the movie. So he's at a different point of his A-listness. And then this happens and sets up basically
Awakenings, he
whatever
has
he
the
wants to
Oscar
do.
nom, right? So this era,
I got to take a look at
Awakenings.
the filmography.
I think 1990 is his apex.
I think late 70s, early 80s, like you go with Taxi
Talent
Driver,
apex.
Godfather 2, and Raging Bull and Deer Hunter in there. Like that's hard to top. But again, we're
I
talking.
feel like he has more juice now. It's a good argument. Razor blading garlic. I have this as Apex Mountain. I've never seen it done better.
It's a one of one.
It's so good. I don't have anyone in my family who does that. The Lufthansa heist.
Is this Apex Mountain for the Lufthansa?
For the
heist?
Lufthansa heist,
Yeah,
or was it
I mean,
something
you
else?
mentioned two other movies that nobody's ever
Yeah,
heard of.
But
I think
what
it-
about the actual heist?
I don't think this might have trumped the heist, that it became the heist in Goodfellas.
Had you ever heard of the Lufthansa heist before Goodfellas? Really?
I mean, I saw the Goodfellas at a young age.
But just like you
No.
lived closer to JFK than any of the other people at this table.
I live very close to JFK. I don't think so. But I mean, I saw the movie when I was 9.
Yeah.
So
Joe Pesci? Yes.
Yes.
Mob murder code no for Joe
You gonna
Pesci?
go Home Alone?
You're going My Cousin Vinny?
well, I mean, it probably is just worth acknowledging that quarter of time when Joe Pesci was the most important movie star in America. I
I
mean,
had it.
And then he did.
Somehow
then
my
he played
document's
golf
so
for
long.
25 years and then made The Irishman.
yeah. I mean, I don't
Where
know.
is that?
We just don't talk about this enough. Like here's what he does.
Oh, we did it in Lethal Weapon 2.
Mhm.
We did a
you
whole
talked
thing.
about it. Okay.
Well, we just did a whole thing about it. He was basically done. He was doing like TV movies and then Lethal Weapon 2 and then rips off this 7-year run that, go ahead, give it to us.
I mean, you just said it. If you guys talked about it, I don't want to repeat, but Goodfellas, Home Alone, The Super, JFK, My Cousin Vinny, Lethal Weapon 3, The Public Eye, Home Alone 2, A Bronx Tale, Jimmy Hollywood with Honors, Casino.
And then he goes and plays golf for 20 years.
Yeah. And this like 5'6" guy from the Bronx is a matinee idol.
Yeah.
It's and frankly, in half of those movies, he's phenomenal. I mean, he's in My Cousin Vinny. He's magnificent.
it's great in Home Alone. He's playing a different person each
Yeah.
one. His apex is right around.
You're
gonna
right. It
say
probably
here.
starts right between Lethal
After
Weapon 2
this,
and
he can do it.
Goodfellas.
Yeah, he can do whatever. Mob murder code justifications. Down to 3. Tell Mike it was only business.
Mhm.
Godfather 1. He's gone and we couldn't do nothing about it. Goodfellas. It is what it is. The Irishman.
Yeah.
What do you got?
I like It Is What It Is, personally.
I think I do too. I think Scorsese finally nailed it the best in that. It is what it is.
That's a good case. Yeah, I like that.
Pistol whipping, Apex Mountain.
God, that's so fucking violent. Both pistol whippings. When the fucking gun explodes on Bats and it just like shatters because he hits him
Yes.
so hard with it.
So they must have edited that, right? So we're supposed to think he like shatters all his teeth.
Smash the barrel out.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think it's the
Is
Apex
it Apex
Mountain.
Mountain for pistol whipping?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the act of pistol whipping or pistol whipping on film?
Pistol whipping on film.
Ever since I dropped Apex Mountain of Amsterdam in Ocean's 12, you've been very confused about Apex Mountain.
Well, yeah, that's a city with centuries of history. I don't. That's just very confusing.
Mobster wigs, no question, yes. Ray Liotta has to be yes. We're going to go into him in a second. Prison
Okay.
tomato sauce, unquestionably yes.
what
I've
other
never
what
seen
other
anyone
prison-
make
Yeah.
so great. Lorraine Bracco, yes. Paul Sorvino,
No, Law and Order, right? Wasn't he on Law and Order?
he's been in a lot of stuff. He's had a really good career. He was in a movie back when I watched every TV movie. He was in a movie called Dummy with LeVar Burton.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I think, one of the best TV movies ever. And he played a lawyer who was losing his hearing.
Oh, no, he's not. He's in Law and Order, but it wasn't like a big deal.
He was losing his hearing as he was defending this guy for murder who couldn't speak. LeVar Burton was the guy who couldn't speak. And he was amazing in that movie. I think he might have won an Emmy for that. But I don't know. He's just been around forever. I don't even know what his apex was. I just feel like he's been in our lives for 50 years.
I mean, he goes cruising in reds back to back in 88-81. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see, I'm wearing the jean jacket.
Ciara and I, we're looking at each other like Ray Liotta.
Why do you think I'm growing this mustache out?
Yeah, two guys with blue bandanas in your back pockets.
Oh my God, we're doing cruising. Henny Youngman, no. The word "fucko,"
Yeah.
100%.
yes, never been used ever better. Any other Apex Mountains?
How about Cuddy Sark?
Oh,
You don't see a lot of Cuddy Sark
Cuddy and
anymore.
water.
Yeah, but
You're
just
getting
like
it tonight when we get some dinner.
yeah, but
That's what
Cuddy
that's what
going
you're
in the
drinking.
front door and out the back door with the Maytag. I love like 7 and 7. Is that's what Jimmy orders, I think.
Yep.
I was trying to figure out, can I step on a possibly unanswerable question?
Yeah.
How drunk is Tommy in this movie? Because there's a couple of times where they're like, oh, Tommy's loaded. I'm sorry. Like, you get loaded. Don't like they take so many shots in this movie.
yeah.
Like Sean and I were just talking about this yesterday on text. There are scenes where like a guy will do a shot at the table, get up and go to the bar and do a shot as soon as he gets to the bar. Like that usually for me is like, I'm pretty close to being in the bag of that.
That was my 50th birthday party, which I left after
right.
2 hours.
Yeah, you had to do like
be taken home.
Where's Bill? Not the first time I've
gone.
said "Where's Bill" at his own party.
Yeah, fair.
he's he took the glasses off.
Fair. I get
Took the
excited.
contacts
I
off.
want to be a good host.
But how much of this is like if Tommy just has an Amstel, things are a lot
Things are
more
so much
calm.
better.
You know what I mean?
Cuddy and water is aggressive. Like I've never heard anyone order that my entire life.
Yeah, is everyone in the movie a functioning alcoholic all the
Seems
way up
like
until
it.
1975?
I mean,
they're also,
Jimmy definitely
I think
is.
also the second half of the movie, at least Henry and everybody around Henry is on cocaine the entire time.
yeah.
Or pills.
I mean, it explains some of the aggressive behavior. I don't know if it explains. I mean, there's different kinds of drunks. There's mean, violent drunks, and then there's more relaxed drunks.
Yeah.
Tommy he's pretty violent.
I would also say Apex Mountain for me for Pittsburgh drug dealers.
Mm.
Want to see helicopters?
Oh, and that guy makes an incredible comeback in The Irishman, that actor, where he plays the guy who's kind of like trying to go around Harvey Keitel's back. I can't remember what that actor's name is, but he's a great that guy.
Were you
too.
disappointed Mayor wasn't in this movie? Picky Nits. Biggest one is Liotta and Pesci are just too old for their parts.
It's crazy to read.
Not going to let it bother me, but Pesci's 18 years older than the guy he's playing.
Tommy was
basically.
28 when he was killed.
Yeah.
28.
And, you notice this when you've seen it a million times, but young Tommy is in the movie in the beginning when he gets pinched and he's the little guy. And then we fast forward.
Yeah, okay, Henry.
5 years. Ray Liotta's like 35 in real life playing a 21-year-old. And then Pesci's like at least 40.
Right.
Also playing a 21-year-old. And it's comical.
Is it just one more Apex Mountain? Is it Apex Mountain for kid actors who look like their adult counterparts?
That's a good one.
Because Henry and Tommy
especially.
it's unreal.
That's a good one. Another pick of nits. Sonny's not discussing the bill in front of all of Tommy's friends with Tommy.
No.
There's just no fucking way you're doing that ever. Tommy's a lunatic.
He's terrifying.
You're saying, hey, Tommy, can we come over here and talk?
Call
for 1
him the
second?
next day. Like,
Yeah.
what is it's crazy.
It's a flaw I noticed maybe 37 scenes in. Another pick in it. Where was the obligatory strip joint scene? Scorsese just doesn't deal with that.
This is one of the only Scorsese movies that has a sex scene in it. It's
Right.
not something he does. He does not do this a lot.
Just feel like these guys would have been at strip joints at least a little bit of the time.
It's not his
I
thing.
don't know, but there's also like the element of it where I think that this is this turning point. I'm sure that the old Corleone era mobsters went to burlesque shows or whatever, but like Paulie's like, don't do drugs, don't bring drugs around here. So I think that there is a reticence to get into vice the way that these guys did. They were more like numbers runners and racketeers.
Are we okay with the elaborate meals they were cooking in prison? Like, was that realistic or was that ridiculous?
I choose to believe it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It makes it more fun. I mean, the idea of those guys having an absolute blast playing cards and eating pasta every
Henry
night.
in his tracksuit going around dealing benzos all day.
Yeah.
Jesus.
I'll just read what I wrote here for this next one. When Henry pistol whips the neighbor stands there like a mannequin. He's like the guy who fought Jake Paul. Little joke for the people who saw the Jake Paul fight. So they get married and they get like $50,000 in money, but yet they're still living in Karen's mom's house for 6 months. He's a fucking gangster. He can't buy like a small apartment or
Well, isn't everything about what they're doing trying to hide the fact that they have the money that they have?
Right. He says at the end, I never paid my taxes. I don't have a social security card. He's trying to live off the grid. And a great way to do that is to
and all of them, they're all living in like row houses or townhouses on pretty quiet residential streets. It's not like they have these garish Long Island mansions or anything.
Billy Batts has 3 people at his getting out of prison party. All of them leave him behind with the 2 people in some semi-rival gang who had a friend say, keep him here. And those guys like, Billy, I'll see you later.
So my
Congrats
thing is,
again
I
now.
think Jimmy keeps him there. I think Jimmy is like getting him drunk.
Yeah.
Because by the time Tommy gets back, Batts is hammered. And he's like, I did what I came home, I got fucking mouths to feed, like.
I love that little subtle thing that they identify there that then becomes kind of like the lifeblood of The Sopranos, which is that, Jimmy and Henry and Tommy are in Paul Vario's crew. They're in Paulie's crew. And Batts is in another crew. They might all be in the Lucchese family, but I
think they're different families.
Maybe they're different.
I think.
Maybe he's in a different family entirely, but ostensibly they're all playing for the same team. But the mafia is not like that. The mafia is, they're all trying to break the law kind of in unison. But there is like these natural rivalries. There is this sense that like these people could rub each other out as much as the police could do the same to them. So it's like a little nuance. It's like not over-explained.
Billy Batts, you think it stood for Billy Battaglia? Or do you think he hit somebody with a bat, so they called him Billy Batts?
I think it's 2 T's, so I think it's Battaglia, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to go with that.
So this is another big one for me. After Lufthansa, Jimmy starts whacking people. Like they find Mr. and Mrs. Roast Beef in the pink Cadillac, and it didn't go well for them.
That's on her marriage certificate.
Roast beefs,
Mrs. Roast Beef.
The roast beefs are dead in their new pink Cadillac. The other people of the heist aren't like.
I think that's supposed to happen in a very compressed period of time.
So it's like the Godfather christening scene all at once.
I mean, the weird thing is that Carbone kills Stacks.
He kills Stacks.
And he kills Maury.
Helps to kill Maury. And then Johnny Roast Beef shows up in the Cadillac. At no point, Carbone's like, hey.
We should go to Arizona or something.
Yeah. Let's take a trip.
I don't get the impression Carbone's too smart. I don't know if
it's true. I was like, what's Carbone going to do?
I mean, his toupee would weigh 10 pounds.
I'm going to go to the Iowa Writers Program. Like, I don't know what Carbone's going to really get into.
Any other nitpicks for you guys?
No,
I have one.
Okay.
How does Karen know that Henry is at Maury's when Bruce assaults her?
That's a great fucking question.
How does she's on a payphone?
Do you think she called Maury's wife?
I guess.
Because Maury's wife comes over when she's like, he hasn't come home.
But how would Maury's wife know that Henry is at Maury's shop when they're there to get money from Jim? Like, I don't understand that scene at all.
It's a great one. The whole payphone concept in general in these mobster movies always falls apart for me, where it's like, don't use your phones, but just use the same payphone every time that they can't trace miraculously.
Right. But the FBI couldn't just trace all the payphones in a 50-mile radius.
New category just for this one. Best senior yearbook quote. Here are nominees for the kids out there. Wait, senior yearbook? Craig, people are graduating now, right? Is it too late to change the yearbooks?
No, they just become NFTs.
Craig, you just graduated from high school. What was your senior yearbook quote?
It's actually one of the ones that Bill's about to read. So,
here are the nominees. You're a real jerk. You wasted 8 fucking aprons on this guy.
Goody.
The way I saw it, everyone takes a beating sometimes. The 2 greatest things in life, never rat on your friends, always keep your mouth shut. That's actually a fantastic yearbook quote. What am I, a schmuck on wheels? Every once in a while, I'd have to take a beating, but then I didn't care. The way I saw it, everybody takes a beating sometimes. One day, the kids from the neighborhood carried my mother's groceries all the way home. You know why? It was out of respect. And then my birth certificate and my arrest sheet, that's all you'd ever have to know, that I was alive. That's the one Craig used. Which one would you use? I think I actually really like the 2 greatest things in life, never rat on your friends, always keep your mouth shut, would be a very good senior yearbook quote.
Sure.
I signed every yearbook that I was asked to sign. What's the fucking matter with you? What is the fucking matter with you? What are you, stupid or what? Tommy, I'm kidding with you. What do you fucking do? What are you, a fucking sick maniac?
You feeling strong?
What are you, a fucking sick maniac is really great.
Well, he was a sick maniac.
He was. You're not going to get a divorce. We're not animale.
My yearbook quote in 95 was, Karen!
Next category. Could this be remade as a 10-episode Netflix show? So obviously sacrilege, but the Lufthansa heist is still kind of sitting there. Wouldn't be. I would watch part one of that.
Let me ask you this though: Would you do the flip side? Would you do the cops going after these guys?
Okay, here's the thing.
Such a high degree of difficulty.
I
I mean, this is one of the greatest movies ever made.
I'm just asking. I'm just throwing it out there.
I say this with no disrespect to the work that my father did for many years. These guys were fucking idiots. Like a lot of these mobsters, there's a reason that the mob has gone very underground in the last 20 years. It's because the way that they did business was they paid people to not bust them. It was well known about the crimes for 80, 90, 100 years.
What does the cop say to Jimmy in the beginning when he puts the money in the cigarette box?
I would tell somebody, but who would care?
Who would listen?
Yeah, who would listen?
Yeah, who would listen?
Yeah.
And once that no longer worked, once there became enough Elliot Ness types and the government got involved and RICO started becoming a big part of prosecuting these guys, it kind of started to fall down, and then you get kind of gangsters who want to be famous like John Gotti, and then they also contributed to the downfall of a lot of these systems. So like, if you did it from the cops' perspective, I mean, they were wiretapping guys like Jimmy the Gent for 5 years, and it was well known that he killed all these people. So it probably wouldn't be as interesting as you would want it to be.
Probably
my first take thing, should the cops have stepped in earlier to have saved Frankie Carbone?
in the Cadillac. Oh no, that was the Cadillac. What did he die? No, he died in the
he died in the
ice
meat locker.
truck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was
The roast beefs died in the Cadillac.
roast beefs. Yeah,
Why was he Johnny Roast Beef? You think?
I don't know. We should do a 10-episode Netflix.
You think he was
series
like a
about
deli?
it.
Think he worked in a deli initially?
I feel like it's either one of two things. It's
Deli
either because he
related.
really liked roast beef or he looked like a piece of roast beef.
It's true.
I think he had a deli background. Probably unanswerable questions.
A deli background.
Ray Liotta and Lorraine Bracco never achieved these heights again.
Uh huh.
Mm-hmm.
And yet in this movie, they were as good as everybody else in it.
Yeah, as good as like anybody's ever been.
So what happened with both of them? I think Lorraine Bracco is a little easier to understand because there's harder to find good female parts. I think it's harder to break it as an
I think Liotta's
A-lister.
got documented pretty like personal problems. Like there's in some ways, I think that there are other examples of people having this kind of success where it just becomes your whole persona is tied to a character, and he's talked about like not a day goes by where someone doesn't walk up to me and start talking about Goodfellas, and I think he's come to accept that. But it sounds like he's admittedly a pretty difficult person to work with. He said, like, especially if he's playing like a gangster or a cop, like he's good every 5 years in something. Copland, Marriage Story,
Copland. Great in Copland.
like he's definitely comes back around. He makes a lot of shit too.
He made a couple of
He's good in
bad
Place
choices.
Beyond the Pines. He's good.
Very good. He made a couple of bad choices from 91 through 95. And whether those were personal or not, the films that he made
Are
were
you
not
going to
were
shit
not
on
very good.
Unlawful Entry here?
It's okay.
No, he did. He made bad
Those
choices.
movies aren't that good. I mean, Lorraine Bracco is Dr. Melfi, though. I mean, she gets to be a part of probably the greatest TV show ever made. So it's not like she
was
vanished.
the Marco Ravaroni of The Sopranos. It's an 83 Sixers joke for Chris. She's good in
like
The
her.
Sopranos.
I like her a lot.
But she was 10 years between basically her being in the limelight.
I mean, she was married to Harvey Keitel in what seemed like a very tumultuous relationship at that time.
Who did she dump him for?
Edward James Olmos, which is one of the iconic actor-to-actor jumps that's ever been made.
That's amazing shit.
This Keitel just wasn't interesting and intense enough for her, Chris.
Right.
She needed to go one next level.
But Liotta also is just as good, honestly, in Something Wild. In the last 30 minutes of Something Wild, when he shows up as Melanie Griffith's husband, and he's just an absolute psycho, he's 1,000% believable.
He also made this movie as his mother was dying. Like, I mean, I think he had like a very tumultuous making of this movie. I think it was just like it didn't happen at the right time in his life.
It's kind of incredible that Tarantino didn't revive him. You would have thought he was like, he fits all of the check marks on the Tarantino
He should
list
have
of
been in
like, I'm
Jackie
saving
Brown.
this guy. Yeah.
There should have been, like, Liotta could have maybe done.
Or Kill Bill
Yeah.
or something where.
There's still time.
Yeah.
There's still time.
More unanswerable questions. Did the Billy Bats corpse smell ever leave Henry's trunk? The corpse was 6 months.
I hit a skunk.
6 months. He's very. I just think. I think you have to just get rid of the car.
That's just one of the things where he could get a new car. He really
just
seems
get
to
the new
like
car.
that Pontiac GP.
It took me back to that moment, too, when the inside of your trunk, if you took the little rug out, was just all metal. You know, he's hosing down the metal.
Yeah.
How much method acting was Liotta during the helicopter sequence? We're guessing some.
This is isn't this the origin of the snort a line of coke and the camera zooms in and your eyes go wide and
the head
snaps back.
Yeah.
That's the first time we ever saw that, right?
Yeah, but that became a Scorsese.
By the time it's
weak
in
spot
Vinyl
eventually.
and Wolf of Wall Street, Vinyl especially, I think it was like
Vinyl, everyone who did coke, they're getting whiplash,
he would
throwing
like
their
take a
heads
hit
back.
and he would just go running
Yeah.
out the door and do like 50 push-ups.
And then the big one was Jimmy actually going to kill Karen with the Dior dresses.
That's a great question. I honestly don't know.
I say yes because those guys were like, they saw her come and they were like, shh.
I think I would assume yes because he doesn't walk her down there. Although you could say no because he doesn't walk her down there. But like because he's just like keep going, and he's like checking the streets a lot. They shot that at Smith and it's set at Smith and Ninth.
Yeah,
that's where I used to live.
What? Oh yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It looks like
Run into the BQE there.
What piece of memorabilia would you want from the movie?
Pink Cadillac.
That's a good one. With the roast beefs in it or no?
Yeah, they're rotting corpses. I
Okay.
think that'd be great. No, just a big roast beef sandwich sitting on the driver's seat.
I would either love Karen's living room set that they have made special,
the rock that
Yeah.
opens. I forgot to put that on What's Age the Best. The rock wall.
or Henry's crucifix that he covers up, and then she's just like, my mother thinks you're Jewish, and he's just like, just the good half.
I have the painting.
Yeah.
Oh,
If it was the actual painting from the movie, that's a cool thing.
But
to
I
just
maintain that like this movie just makes me Bamboo Lounge, Sweet Lounge, like I want to own a bar.
It's just very suspicious of you. You want a murder palace, is what you want.
I just want a Cuddy Sark. I want to bring
I feel
Cuddy
like
back.
it's the best time ever to buy a bar.
Buy the dip.
Yeah. Who won the movie?
This is really hard. I know that there's an obvious answer, but this is really
We
hard.
did good time here. We still have a chance to be finished less than the actual length of the movie, which we always try to pride ourselves in.
Well, then I'll just vamp for about 20 minutes about Scorsese some more. Scorsese wins.
Mhm.
He wins because
He wrote it.
This is him in full, and it resets the trajectory of his career. If he does not make this movie, I don't know. I feel certain that we don't have The Irishman, Killers of the Flower Moon, all this stuff into his 70s, and that he has become really like the mascot of American movies in the last 10 years. The iconography around him, the way that we look at him as like representational of what American movies are. I think he ultimately just becomes someone more like Brian De Palma or Robert Altman, like these 70s filmmakers who made great movies in the 70s and in the early 80s, but they have, whether they passed away or they've become less relevant or they haven't worked as much, they become more like relics of a time. Martin Scorsese is as relevant as he's ever been right now. And the reason for that is because he made this movie in 1990. So
I think that's the key point, and that's why I also had Scorsese, because this allows him to ascend out of this generation that was this famous generation, had all these great filmmakers, and this became his Tom Brady second 3 Super Bowls era that he goes into, where he just leaves everybody behind. That's it.
And the thing that Sean said before, it's just like to have the best movie of the 70s, 80s, and 90s
Well, what about the fact that his two of his biggest rivals, if not the biggest two, released movies the same month as Goodfellas, and he fucking dusted them. Godfather 3 and Bonfire of the Vanities. And he wiped the floor with both of them, and that was it. And then he's off from that point on.
So some people, I feel like you've talked about this a little bit as a writer. I've certainly felt this as I've gotten older. I look back on what I used to do and the writing I used to do, the editing I used to do, anything I used to do at work. And I was like, I just had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I was just improvising and faking it. And you get to be a certain age and you're like, oh, this is how you do it.
Well, I
this
think
is how you get successful.
That's why he's one of those people. One of the things that makes him so special, outside of obviously his eye and his facility with like every aspect of filmmaking, is when you watch the behind the scenes clips of Goodfellas and you read anything, Glenn Kenny's book, you read the oral histories or whatever, he has a vitality and an energy that hasn't dampened even in this age. He makes movies in a way that I don't think very many people make them. He has like an energy for it. He has a fascination with making them, and he has like a passion. Like people talk about his reactions to their performances on the set make them feel like what they're doing is meaningful, because he's just like, yeah, do that again, do it this way, and that's
Well, he gets a lot of repeat customers too, which I think
yeah,
matters.
but the energy
sign.
that he has, I think that they're, of course,
And like David O. Russell.
a lot of people contribute to why this movie is the way it is, but it's inimitably his.
I think he's clearly the winner. I didn't even debate it. Who won the movie? I just wrote down Scorsese.
I was going to
I
throw
think-
Jim Gordon out there because he wrote the second half of Layla.
It's not a bad one.
Yeah.
Probably got a nice check off of that.
Well, he's dead, but yeah.
Well, at the time. I think there's a conversation about Pesci.
There is.
That very similarly.
If this wasn't one of the greatest American movies
You
of all
could talk
time.
me into any of the three guys. You could make the argument that De Niro is the weight of this movie. He's like the sort of the specter of evil in it. You could make the argument that his performance doing the voiceover means Liotta is it because he's the voice of the movie in a lot of ways.
And then Frank Vincent being the third.
Yeah,
I had an exclamation
Chuck Loeb.
point. I had an exclamation point question based off this last question. Was it weirdly better for Scorsese that he didn't win the Oscar for Best Director for this movie? Because I think it helped with the narrative. People liked the movie so much. They admired it so much. And people love getting agitated when there's been some sort of injustice.
Get Marty his Oscar. We got to do it
Yeah,
for Marty.
If he wins the Oscar, it's like, great job, he wins, and that's it. But the fact that he didn't win, I think is great competitively. I think it helped with the whole, people kind of rallied around how great he was in a way that I don't know if that happens if he just wins.
What beat The Irishman?
I won't think it was Parasite, right? It was 2019. So I think you're right. I think that's a very good point.
Thank you.
Clearly, there was this sense that Scorsese had not been properly recognized in his time. So everything that happens pretty much from 1980 when he should have won all the way through 2006, you feel like you're getting the best of everybody. But there's another part of that. There's another reason why he has never faded away and that he's remained relevant, because he could have stopped after 2006. He could have stopped making amazing movies. In fact, I look at his movies since The Departed, and I'm as blown away by those as the other ones. I'm as blown away by Wolf of Wall Street. I'm as blown away by Shutter Island. I'm as blown away. Movies that I underestimated when I saw them. And I go back and I'm like, wow, this is unreal what power he has. And one of the reasons for it is what Chris was saying. It's not only that he's passionate about making his movies. It's that he is the number one advocate for movies in the world.
Yeah.
He is the person who, every time somebody puts a camera in front of him, he's like, let me tell you about this movie I love. Let me tell you about this movie I love. You know why this movie is important? Let me tell you about this movie over here. It's frankly inspiring. And people who work in movies love him for that.
Yeah.
He fights for it every time. So I'm sure that a part of it is exactly what you said, Bill, which is that people were like, wow, this guy got screwed like in 4 different movies and didn't get Best Director. But it's bigger than that, because like we talk about the Academy Awards and I care about them a lot, but that shit doesn't matter. Like what matters is that he loves doing that job and he loves the art form's history.
Yeah.
And he's always working towards making the best possible version of it, which is really cool. There's not a lot of people who, like, he doesn't take days off. That's really inspiring.
Unlike Chris.
No, he's been coasting for 14 months.
just
Now we're
showed
back
up,
in person.
Got new facial hair.
You feeling fucking strong now, Chris? That was it. We kept it under the time of the movie. Congratulations, guys. It's great to be back. Chris Ryan, Sean Fennessey, a pleasure. Craig, Corey, thanks for coming in. Our first post-vaccination podcast. This was fun.
Lethal Weapon 3 next.
Proof of life after this, right?
Proof of life, the reproof.
Karen!